Chapter 1631. Linger's words exposed her clear nature. Mu Hongyan was stunned for a moment before she finally understood what Linger's words meant. Immediately, her beautiful face was filled with spring, like a ripe apple. She was also a woman, so she was very clear about the fear and expectation of a woman when she was still young. She had no reason to refuse and slightly nodded. Everyone else had already left. In order to avoid embarrassment, everyone retreated out of the villa and waited from afar. Mu Hongyan turned into a caring big sister and gently exhorted, "Linger, don't be too shy later. Women will experience their first time, and it will be a little painful. Just bear with it for a while, and it will be fine." Linger seemed to understand and nodded. "I'm not afraid of pain." Looking at her delicate appearance, Mu Hongyan couldn't help but chuckle. Her fingers lifted the strands of hair by her ear and said, "Don't worry, I'm here for everything." Linger nodded in confusion. A piece of clothing slid down from Linger's body, revealing her graceful figure. Mu Hongyan's eyes revealed a look of admiration. As a woman, she had to admit that Linger was like a budding flower. Although it was already mature, it had not been plucked and was so tender that water could be pinched out. Her skin was snow white and did not lose its rosy color. Even Mu Hongyan felt a rush of excitement when she saw it. Linger was transformed from a 100-year-old ginseng and was the most perfect figure. Moreover, even if she did not exercise, her figure would still be in the most perfect state. This was really the golden ratio. If it was more or less, she would lose her beauty and charm. "Linger, you are so beautiful." Mu Hongyan could not hold back, and her fingers gently slid across Linger's skin. Linger slightly trembled, and her face was red as she said, "Big Sister Mu, you are also very beautiful." Mu Hongyan had the unique charm of a mature woman, which was completely different from Linger's youth. However, Mu Hongyan was experienced, so she naturally admired Linger's youthful state. Linger took off her clothes, and not long after, they were completely naked. She tried her best to restrain the shyness in her heart as she gently bit her lips. Her snow-white teeth left 2 shallow teeth marks on her rosy lips. Mu Hongyan understood her feelings and comforted her softly. "Don't worry. Do as I say." Tang Zheng had already taken off his clothes and was lying on the bed like a log. Linger wanted to look, but didn't dare to. She could only glance at him from the corner of her eyes. Mu Hongyan laughed involuntarily and said, "There are only a few of us here. If you want to look, just look openly." Linger was so embarrassed that her ears turned red as she said in a mosquito-like voice, "Big Sister Mu, don't make fun of me. From now on, you are his woman. What can't you see? This is an open and above-board matter. It is a matter of course. Can't you look at me?" Mu Hongyan guided and tried her best to dispel Linger's fear of difficulties. She set an example and pretended to be natural and unrestrained as she looked at Tang Zheng. But when her gaze fell on Tang Zheng, her face couldn't help but turn red. Her mind was filled with images that were not suitable for children, and her breathing also became hurried. "Big Sister Mu, what's wrong?" Linger asked with concern. Mu Hongyan took a deep breath as her chest heaved up and down. Only then did she suppress the restlessness in her heart and said with a trembling voice, "I'm fine. Let's begin." Linger was looking forward to it, but she was also at a loss as she followed Mu Hongyan's instructions. Everything seemed unfamiliar and even a little clumsy. But it was precisely this simplicity that made Mu Hongyan's heart palpitate. She secretly made up her mind as she glanced at Tang Zheng and spat, "If you dare to not treat Linger well in the future, I won't agree to it. See how I'll deal with you." She was deeply moved by Linger's spirit and sacrifice. Although Linger didn't have any experience, she was very smart and gradually understood the experience that Mu Hongyan imparted to her. Hiss! Linger sucked in a breath of cold air as her delicate nose wrinkled. Her eyes were like water, as if they could speak. Mu Hongyan looked at her and felt as if she had experienced it herself. Her heart clenched as she said, "If it hurts, stop for a while." Linger stubbornly shook her head. She took a deep breath and stubbornly said, "I'm fine." Then, she followed Mu Hongyan's legendary experience and followed the same pattern. She gradually understood the essence of it and that indescribably wonderful feeling. Mu Hongyan's face and ears turned red as her breathing involuntarily quickened, especially when Linger's mouth couldn't help but let out a faint sound. It was as if there was magic that drilled into her heart and teased every cell, causing her heart to itch unbearably. Linger, you've already learned it. Just do as you wish. I'll go out first. After she finished speaking, she didn't wait for Linger's reply. She didn't even dare to look back, much less take another look as she flew away. Linger fell into a wonderful state. She forgot everything and didn't have time to pay attention to Mu Hongyan's departure. She felt a powerful, pure yang energy enter her body. Then, her pure yin energy also continuously flowed into Tang Zheng's body. She was formed from ginseng, so this feeling was much clearer than other people, especially after the pure yang energy settled in her body and fused with her zhen qi. Then, her zhen qi surged like a torrential river. This also has the effect of increasing power. She was very smart and immediately understood that this was a mutually beneficial process. Not only was her pure yin energy useful to her master, but his pure yang energy also had a great effect on her. The pure yang energy and pure yin energy interacted and fused within the two people's bodies. Two auras slowly rose from the top of their heads, one black and one white, one yin and one yang. They intertwined and intertwined above their heads. You had me, I had you, just like two people on a bed. This was a great harmony that had never been seen before. It even surpassed Tang Zheng's previous state of mind when he did this. That was because Linger had a special constitution. Of course, it was also because Tang Zheng's strength had reached the peak of perfection. It was far from what it was in the past. When all these factors were combined, it created this wonderful and complex change. More and more auras rose from the top of their heads. The yin and yang auras also increased. They were like two clouds, constantly tumbling and changing, faintly emitting the sound of wind and thunder. Linger was immersed in this wonderful state and didn't notice the strange phenomenon above her head. She only instinctively let her body rise and fall, like a small boat in the middle of the sea, undulating. However, the zhen qi in her body continued to rise. It broke through one restriction after another, breaking through a threshold. She was wild with joy. She had never experienced such a feeling of cultivation rapidly rising. She felt that she was too blessed. This wasn't helping her master, but rather her master was helping her. How was this a sacrifice? This was a great honor. At this time, her respect for her master was like a torrential river. It was indescribable. This feeling of rising continued. The yin and yang auras above her head also changed more and more violently. Finally, after the two auras completely fused, they gradually separated and turned into a yin and yang fish. This was the harmony of yin and yang. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1632. Suddenly, Ling let out a delicate cry. She straightened her body, revealing her beautiful figure. Then, she stopped moving. The wind stopped and the rain stopped. Bang! The yin-yang fish dissipated and split into two. The yin qi entered Tang Zheng's body, while the yang qi completely fell from Ling Er's head. Ling suddenly opened her eyes, which were filled with joy. Her cultivation had broken through a huge threshold and reached the first stage of the soul formation realm. Ling was transformed from ginseng, so her cultivation speed was much faster than other people's. Furthermore, she was quite intelligent and didn't relax. She had been working hard on her cultivation. Therefore, she had broken through to the first stage of the Yuanying realm, but she never expected that she could break through 9 stages in one go. It was simply a miracle. Before she could slowly appreciate this joy, her gaze immediately fell on Tang Zheng's body. Compared to her own gains, she was more concerned about her master's safety. When her gaze fell on Tang Zheng's body, she discovered that his eyes were still closed. Her heart immediately felt as if it was being grabbed. Her face was filled with disappointment, but she suddenly heard a voice in her heart. Linger, Master. She was overjoyed. Her eyes glowed as she asked, Master, are you awake? However, when she looked at Tang Zheng, she realized that his eyes were still closed. She couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be that she was hallucinating? No, that was her master's voice. How could she have heard wrongly? Ling, I'm in your heart. Tang Zheng's voice sounded again, but it didn't enter her ears. Instead, it sounded directly in her heart. She immediately came to a realization. She was actually connected to her master's heart. Master, how could this be? Linger asked in confusion. I don't know either. Perhaps it's because of what we did just now. Master, you know everything. Ling lowered her head. Although Tang Zheng's eyes were still closed, she didn't dare to look at him. Her face was red all the way to her neck. Linger, thank you, Tang Zheng said gratefully. His tone was complicated, as if he didn't expect Linger to make such a big sacrifice for him. Master, hearing this, Linger's heart surged and her emotions fluctuated. She said, I'm willing to do this. It's my honor. Silly Linger. Tang Zheng hesitated for a while and sighed. Linger isn't stupid at all. Linger is very smart, Linger said with a sweet and happy smile. After a pause, Linger hurriedly asked, Master, what happened to you? My pure yang energy is about to erupt. It's currently brewing and will soon erupt completely. Fortunately, you saved me and resolved my pure yang energy. Otherwise, I would really be in danger. Tang Zheng replied. Although he had fallen into a deep sleep, it was different this time. In the past, he was muddle-headed, but now his consciousness was very clear. Previously, his consciousness was completely sealed, and he couldn't sense or communicate with the outside world. However, ever since he and Linger reached a great harmony, everything changed. Not only could he communicate with Linger, but he could also sense the outside world. However, he had no way to communicate with others. Currently, he could only communicate with Linger alone. However, this also solved a big problem. At least he wasn't blind and had a way to find solution. Linger, I will definitely treat you well in the future, Tang Zheng promised. As a man, he dared to take responsibility for what he did. Since it had already happened, he should take responsibility and not avoid it. Linger's mouth revealed a charming and happy smile as she gently said, Master, I will also serve you well. After tasting human nature for the first time, her every movement had a different kind of charm that made people's hearts palpitate. Tang Zheng's heart couldn't help but violently beat. He thought to himself that he hadn't realized before that Linger had already grown into such a beautiful young lady. What virtue did he have to be able to make her fall in love with him? If he dared to not take responsibility, even the heavens wouldn't tolerate it. Master, when can you recover? Linger naturally didn't know about Tang Zheng's complicated thoughts and hurriedly asked the most important question. Tang Zheng regretfully said, I'm afraid I can only maintain this state for the time being. I will need your help before I can communicate with the outside world. This is Linger's honor. Master, I believe you'll get better very soon. Linger, put on our clothes first and then let the others come in. I have something important to tell them. Tang Zheng was very clear that he was racing against the god of death. He had to race against time. If he was slightly careless, the pure yang energy would completely erupt, and then he would fall into a state of eternal damnation. Linger hurriedly climbed down from his body, but her legs were weak. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. She said in a slightly embarrassed manner, Master, I'm too stupid. Linger is the smartest. She's not stupid. Tang Zheng comforted her. Linger happily laughed and hurriedly dressed the two of them. Looking at the neatly dressed master, she revealed a very gratified expression. She was like a newly married wife who had dressed her husband properly. The kind of pride and arrogance was overflowing in her words. When the others saw Linger walk out, no one revealed a frivolous expression. Instead, they all looked at her with incomparable respect. Of course, there was no lack of anticipation in their eyes. Master wants everyone to go in. Linger said, What? Is he awake? Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly pushed the door open and entered, but they still saw Tang Zheng lying on the bed like a block of wood. Master has not woken up, but he is already connected to me and can communicate freely, Linger explained. Everyone was enlightened, but they also felt that it was magical. Tang Zheng and Linger were connected, especially Mu Hongyan. She looked left and right. What she could not do, Linger had done. However, she was not jealous. Instead, she was sincerely gratified. Linger had paid so much. If she did not gain anything, then it would really be disappointing. Linger walked to Tang Zheng's side and looked at him deeply. She said to everyone, Master said that his pure yang energy has not completely erupted, but is in the process of brewing. However, as for when it will erupt, he does not have a definite time. But there is no doubt that this time will not be long. He is already very dangerous. After repeating Tang Zheng's words, Linger's expression became dignified. Everyone had different expressions, but without exception, their faces were gloomy. Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, Linger, quickly tell him that Sure and the others will be back soon. Then, they will dissolve his pure yang energy. Linger shook her head and said, Master said that this is not enough. This time is different from the past. They may not be able to dissolve his pure yang energy. We have also sent people to find the Empyrean Fairy. Mu Hongyan quickly added. Linger still shook her head. Master said that we cannot completely pin our hopes on the Empyrean Fairy. Moreover, he does not have much time left. If the Empyrean Fairy is not found, then he will be in danger. So, we must think of another way. Then what can we do? Everyone looked at her with burning eyes. Chapter 16:33. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. They had never expected that Tang Zheng had already found a way. This was really a pleasant surprise. Everyone hurriedly urged Linger to see what kind of method it was. After Linger received Tang Zheng's instructions, she slowly said, All living things under the heavens are solemn, and the sun is illustrious. Solemnity surpasses the heavens, and illustrious surpasses the earth. In short, extreme yin gives birth to yang, and extreme yang gives birth to yin. The Empyrean Fairy had used this principle to survive the danger of the 9 insane body. She nourished herself in the place of extreme yin, and extreme yin gave birth to yang, thus escaping the disaster. Therefore, by the same principle, we must find a place of extreme yang and let Tang Zheng nourish himself there. Extreme yang gives birth to yin, and there might be a chance of survival. Ling was confused as she repeated Tang Zheng's words. Many people were also confused as they did not understand what was going on. Tian Chanzi understood immediately, and his eyes gradually lit up. He clapped his hands and praised, Good, you are really smart. You even thought of this method. Seeing this, the others asked, Tian Chanzi, is this method really feasible? They were not completely confident. With their cultivation and knowledge, they were not able to figure out the mystery. Tian Chanzi, on the other hand, had already begun to see the door. Although his knowledge was not as deep as Tang Zheng's, after such a breakthrough, it was as if the clouds had been lifted. Tian Chanzi nodded seriously and sighed in disappointment. If there is any feasible method, this method may be one of them. It is worth a try. Moreover, this is his own wish, and we must respect his choice. Then where is the place of extreme yang? Mu Hongyan asked. This. Tian Chanzi was in a dilemma. He racked his brains, but he did not know where the place of extreme yang was. The witch tribe elder recalled the holy land of the tribe. Even Xiao Bai was born in the holy land. Could it be that it was a place of extreme yang? Unfortunately, that place had been completely destroyed. Everyone was at a loss of what to do. Linger said slowly, The mystery is in what I said just now. It is so solemn that it is beyond the heavens. This is referring to a place of extreme yin. The place of extreme yin that we found back then was such a place. And the place of extreme yin is in the gate of heaven, which fits the mystery of this sentence. Everyone was enlightened. No wonder this sentence sounded so wise and profound. It turned out that it was so profound. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but ask curiously, Linger, You asked him where he got this sentence from. Why is it that the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's not that simple? Linger blinked and replied, Master, what you said was the original words in the heavenly book. Hiss. Everyone gasped. So it was the original words of the heavenly book. No wonder it contained so much mystery. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought as he muttered to himself. No wonder the Empyrean fairy knew about the method of generating yang through extreme. It turns out that everything was recorded in the tomes of Arcane. Heaven and earth understood the tomes of Arcane, so it's not surprising that they knew about this method. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to think of such a wonderful method. Continued. He earth refers to the land of extreme yang. It's not in the sky, but on the ground. Moreover, it's in the deepest part of the earth. This is the core of the earth, which is also the land of extreme yang. Revealed the riddle for everyone. Everyone was enlightened, but they didn't feel relaxed at all. This sentence was easy to say, but how difficult was it to do? The earth's core. This seemed to be a simple word, but was it easy to reach that place? Of course it wasn't easy. Even if it was possible, it was still unknown. Mu Hongyin clenched her teeth and said resolutely, Now that science and technology have advanced, it's not necessarily impossible to reach the Earth's core. I'll go find the world's most powerful technology. We must reach the Earth's core. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought and said, I'm afraid it doesn't need to be as complicated as you make it out to be. Since this brat dares to say it, he must have a way. Let's hear him out for now. Ling revealed a smile and said, Master said that Senior Tian Chanzi is very powerful. He actually guessed his thoughts. He's simply a roundworm in his stomach. Ling covered her mouth and giggled at the end. Tian Chanzi was greatly embarrassed. He glared hatefully at Tang Zheng and said, Brat, your life is already hanging by a thread, and you still have a mood to make fun of me? Humph. Mu Hongyin hurriedly asked. Linger, quickly asked him what method he has. Everyone's hearts were in suspense. They were far more anxious than Tang Zheng, the person involved. Linger quickly put away her smile and said seriously, Master said that there's no need to go through the trouble of relying on high technology. He already has a method, and the method is on the Tree of Life. Tree of Life. Everyone was completely confused. What did this have to do with the Tree of Life? The Tree of Life's roots extend in all directions and directly reach the Earth's core. So, from the roots of the Tree of Life down, you will successfully reach the destination. Hearing this wonderful idea, everyone was shocked. They were impressed by Tang Zheng's imagination. The others definitely wouldn't have thought of this. This was because they didn't know much about the Tree of Life. They only knew that the Tree of Life could improve the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and was even related to a world. However, they definitely didn't know that the roots of the Tree of Life could actually reach the Earth's core. However, this wasn't a problem for Tang Zheng. This was because he knew the Tree of Life too well. Perhaps he didn't know much about the Tree of Life in the human world, but he knew enough about the Tree of Life in the heaven realm. He even witnessed the growth of the Tree of Life. In addition, with just a thought, he knew the Tree of Life in the heaven realm like the back of his hand. It was naturally not difficult for him to deduce the Tree of Life in the human world. Moreover, when the Tree of Life in the human world sprouted, he was also a witness. Naturally, he had a deeper understanding and understanding. Silence. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Finally, Tian Chanzi clapped his hands and said with joy, Then what are we waiting for? Let's go immediately. Aren't we waiting for the others? Mu Hongyin asked. Not for the time being. We will go to the Tree of Life first and let the others go to the Tree of Life as well. In addition, we can't stop searching for the Empyrean fairy. We still have to find her. Tian Chanzi said firmly. He didn't say the second half of his sentence, which was that he wasn't sure if Tang Zheng's method would work. Just in case, it was always good to prepare a few more methods. Immediately, the villa was in chaos again. Everyone hurriedly prepared. Although the powerful enemies in the human world had been eliminated, there were occasionally fish that escaped the net, which was nothing to worry about. However, Tang Zheng was too weak now. Just in case, they had to be fully prepared. Therefore, they had to mobilize a lot of people to go to the Tree of Life this time and protect Tangzheng in all aspects. Chapter 1634. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. They had never expected that Tangzheng had already thought of a way. This was really a pleasant surprise. Everyone hurriedly urged Ling'er to see what this method was. Ling'er received Tangzheng's instructions and said slowly, "Everything in the world is solemn, and Yang is brilliant. The solemnity is beyond the heavens, and the brilliance is beyond the earth. When the two come together, things are born. In short, extreme yin produces yang, and extreme yang produces yin." The Empyrean fairy had used this principle to survive the danger of the nine insane body. She nourished herself in a place with extreme yin, and extreme yin produces yang, thus escaping the disaster. Therefore, by the same principle, we must find a place with extreme yang and let Tangzheng nourish himself there. Extreme yang produces yin, and there might be a chance of survival. Ling was confused as she repeated Tangzheng's words. Many people were also confused as they did not understand what was going on. However, Heaven Monk immediately understood. His eyes gradually lit up. He clapped his hands and praised. "Good. You brought are really smart. You even thought of this method." When the others saw this, they asked, "Tian Chanzi, is this method really feasible?" They were not completely confident. With their cultivation and knowledge, they were not able to figure out the mystery. Tian Chanzi had already begun to understand. Although he was not as knowledgeable as Tangzheng, after this breakthrough, it was as if the clouds had been lifted. Heaven Monk nodded his head seriously and sighed in disappointment. If there is any other feasible method, then this method might be one of them, and it is worth a try. Moreover, this is his own wish, and we must respect his choice. Then where is the place with extreme yang? Mu Hongyan asked. This. Tian Chanzi was in a dilemma. He racked his brains and did not know where the place with extreme yang was. The witch tribe elder recalled the Holy Land in the tribe. Even Xiao Bai was born in the Holy Land. Could it be that it was a place with extreme yang? Unfortunately, that place had been completely destroyed. Everyone was at a loss of what to do. Ling'er said slowly, "The mystery is in what I said just now. It is so solemn that it is beyond the heavens." This is referring to a place of extreme yin. The place of extreme yin that we found back then was such a place. And the place of extreme yin is in the gate of heaven, which fits the mystery of this sentence. Everyone was enlightened. No wonder this sentence sounded so wise and profound. It turned out that it was so profound. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but ask curiously, "Ling'er, you asked him where he got this sentence from. Why is it that the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's not that simple?" Ling'er blinked and replied, "Master, what you said was the original words in the heavenly book." Hiss. Everyone gasped. So it was the original words of the heavenly book. No wonder it contained so much mystery. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought as he muttered to himself. No wonder the Empyrean fairy knew about the method of generating yang through yin extreme. It turns out that everything was recorded in the tomes of arcane. Heaven and earth understood the tomes of arcane, so it's not surprising that they knew about this method. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to think of such a wonderful method. Ling'er continued, "This is the place of extreme yang. It's not in the sky, but on the ground. Moreover, it's in the deepest part of the earth. This is the core of the earth, which is also the place of extreme yang." Ling'er revealed the riddle for everyone. Everyone was enlightened, but they didn't feel relaxed at all. This sentence was easy to say, but how difficult was it to do? The core of the earth. This seemed like a simple word, but was it easy to reach that place? Of course it wasn't easy. It was even unknown if it was possible. Mu Hongyan clenched her teeth and said resolutely, "Now that science and technology are advanced, it's not impossible to reach the core of the earth. I'll go find the most powerful technology in the world. We must reach the core of the earth." Tian Chanzi was deep in thought and said, "I'm afraid it doesn't need to be as complicated as you make it out to be. Since this brat dares to say it, he must have a way. Let's hear him out for now." Ling revealed a smile and said, Master said that Senior Tian Chanzi is very powerful. He actually guessed his thoughts. He's like a roundworm in his stomach. At the end, Ling covered her mouth and chuckled. Tian Chanzi was greatly embarrassed. He glared hatefully at Tang Zheng and said, Brat, your life is already hanging by a thread, and you're still in the mood to make fun of me? Humph. Mu Hongyan hurriedly asked. Linger quickly asked him what method he has. Everyone's hearts were in suspense. They were far more anxious than Tang Zheng, the person involved. Linger quickly put away her smile and said seriously, Master said that there's no need to go through the trouble of using technology. He already has a method, and the method is on the Tree of Life. Tree of Life. Everyone was completely confused. What did this have to do with the Tree of Life? The roots of the Tree of Life extend in all directions and directly reach the core of the earth. So, from the roots of the Tree of Life down, you will successfully reach your destination. Hearing this ingenious idea, everyone was shocked. They were impressed by Tang Zheng's imagination. Others would never have thought of this. This was because they didn't know much about the Tree of Life. They only knew that the Tree of Life could improve the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and was even related to a world. However, they definitely didn't know that the roots of the Tree of Life could actually reach the core of the earth. However, this wasn't a problem for Tang Zheng. This was because he knew the Tree of Life too well. Perhaps he didn't know much about the Tree of Life in the human world, but he knew enough about the Tree of Life in the heaven realm. He even witnessed the growth of the Tree of Life. In addition, with just a thought, he knew the Tree of Life in the heaven realm like the back of his hand. Naturally, it wasn't difficult for him to deduce the Tree of Life in the human world. Moreover, when the Tree of Life in the human world sprouted, he was also a witness. Naturally, he had a deeper understanding and understanding. Silence. Everyone widened their eyes and looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Finally, Tian Chanzi clapped his hands and said happily, Then what are we waiting for? Let's set off immediately. Aren't we waiting for the others? Mu Hongyan asked. Not for the time being. Let's go to the Tree of Life first and let the others go directly to the Tree of Life. In addition, we can't stop searching for the Empyrean Fairy. We still have to find her, Tian Chanzi said firmly. He didn't say the second half of his sentence, which was that he wasn't sure if Tang Zheng's method would work. Just in case, it was always good to prepare a few more methods. Suddenly, the villa was in chaos again. Everyone hurriedly prepared. Although the powerful enemies in the human world had been eliminated, the occasional fish that escaped the net was nothing to worry about. But now, Tang Zheng was too weak. Just in case, they had to be fully prepared. Therefore, this time, they had to mobilize a lot of people to go to the Tree of Life and protect Tang Zheng in all aspects. The sky turned white. On the first day of a new year, before the sun had risen, a group of people had already soared into the sky from the villa. In an instant, the sky above the villa was filled with people. Riding on their magic weapons, they flew towards the northwest with whooshing sounds. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1635. The Northwest was no longer a desert, but an endless oasis. The changes were earth-shattering, and this was all thanks to the Tree of Life. From afar, the Tree of Life was like a giant umbrella that grew out of the ground, covering the sky and the earth. It was a spectacular sight. This oasis had long been sealed off by the authorities to prevent humans from approaching. Although the authorities also wanted to study the Tree of Life, after experiencing a few bumps, they tacitly stopped coveting the Tree of Life. Everyone landed in front of the Tree of Life. When they looked up, they suddenly felt that they were insignificant, like ants. Tian Chanzi sighed with emotion. The Tree of Life has grown to this point. It is no longer something that can be destroyed just because someone wants to. Back then, the Tree of Life was destroyed by the combined power of the ghost realm, not by a single person. Now, the Tree of Life had fully matured and had the power to protect itself. The Witch Clan quickly took action, establishing a protective circle around the periphery to guard against the enemy. Tang Zheng was carried by Ling, a accompanied by Tian Chanzi, and walked step by step towards the Tree of Life. As for Mu Hongyan, she did not follow and stayed in the capital to take care of the overall situation. The three of them walked to the trunk of the Tree of Life. Tian Chanzi pointed at the Tree of Life and said, "The roots of the Tree of Life are developed. How can we determine which one will reach the core of the earth, and how can we smoothly go down?" Ling had already been instructed by her master and spoke with assurance. Master said that the Tree of Life only has one main root that reaches the core of the earth, and it is not difficult to find this main root. After Ling finished walking, she directly squatted down and inserted her arms into the soil. Immediately, her arms extended infinitely, spreading into the depths of the soil. Ling was originally transformed from ginseng, and the soil was the soil that nourished her growth. The soil to her was like water to a fish, allowing her to use it wantonly. After a while, her fingers touched a root. This root was much smaller than the root next to it, and was very easy to overlook. If not for Tang Zheng's guidance, she definitely would not have found it. When Tang Zheng understood the Tree of Life, he realized that the main root of the Tree of Life was not the seemingly thick root system, but a small root system hidden within the large root system. This was the main root that extended all the way to the core of the earth. Linger looked up at Tian Chanzi and said with a smile, "I found the main root." Tian Chanzi looked at her in surprise. With his ability, he might not be able to find it so quickly. He quickly asked, "Then how do we go down?" "I have an idea too." Linger pointed her finger, and a massive green light enveloped Tang Zheng. It was as if he was in a bubble. Linger transformed into her original form, a small ginseng shrouded in a faint halo. "I'll take Master down." Tian Chanzi looked at Linger, then at Tang Zheng, and said, "I'll go with you." "This is very deep," Linger reminded. Tian Chanzi laughed dryly and said, "Do you think I'm afraid? Don't worry, I won't drag you down." "Oh." Linger did not refuse and said, "Then let's go down quickly." After saying this, one of her roots extended out and wrapped around Tang Zheng. With a whoosh, they drilled into the soil and disappeared. How could Tian Chanzi be willing to fall behind? His whole body lit up with a ray of light, and with a boom, he smashed a large hole in the ground and disappeared without a trace. This hole went all the way down, just like a pangolin burrowing into the ground. Compared to Linger's method, this was clearly inferior. This was where Linger excelled. She was transformed from ginseng, so this was like returning to her home, like a fish back in water. How could Tian Chanzi compare? Underground, one of Linger's roots wrapped around the Tree of Life. Immediately, a majestic spiritual energy of heaven and earth entered her body, benefiting her greatly. Tian Chanzi was also wrapped in a ball of light. He opened his eyes wide and saw the situation underground clearly. He also saw the developed roots of the Tree of Life, which were inextricably linked. Being in the middle of it was like being in a maze. Seeing that Linger chose such a thin root, Tian Chanzi was shocked and asked, "This is the main route you chose?" "I didn't choose it, but Master did." Linger corrected him. Tian Chanzi raised his beard and said, "Nonsense! How can such a root be the main root? For such a towering tree, like the Tree of Life, the main root must be the thickest one. It must be that one." Tian Chanzi turned his head and stared at the thickest root, making a solemn vow. Linger firmly believed in Tang Zheng's choice and retorted, "I believe in Master. If Master says this root is the main root, then it must be this one." Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and muttered, "Truly hopeless. Each and every one of them is fooling around." After a slight pause, Tian Chanzi said, "Then let's wait and see. Let's see who made the right choice." Tian Chanzi stared at the main route he chose and quickly dived down with Ling. This was much more difficult than diving. Especially the deeper they went, the more complicated the inextricably linked routes became. Tian Chanzi had to constantly avoid these complicated routes, turning left and right, constantly shuttling back and forth. On the other hand, Tang Zheng was much more relaxed. The massive green light that wrapped around him seemed to have great magical power. Wherever it went, it directly penetrated the soil effortlessly. Tian Chanzi was envious, jealous, and hateful. Why didn't he have such good treatment? Linger seemed to see through his thoughts and explained, "My skills can only ensure master safety." So, Senior Tian Chanzi, I'm sorry. Tian Chanzi pretended to be natural and unrestrained and said without a care, "How could such a small problem be difficult for me? I'm not that brat, like a vegetable who can't take care of himself." Linger was relieved and said, "That's good. Let's continue forward." Linger quickly led the way. That small root seemed to have no end, but Tian Chanzi walked to the end because that thick root suddenly stopped. It didn't shrink in the slightest, as if it suddenly broke off and suddenly disappeared. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but stop, looking at this scene in disbelief. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and as if he was possessed, he said to himself, "How come it's gone? This is too sudden." Linger pursed her lips and chuckled, as if she had already expected all of this. She said without any surprise, "Senior, I'm right. This is Master's instructions. How could it be wrong?" Tian Chanzi blew his beard and glared, and said with a grunt, "That brat was right for once." He simply didn't choose any other routes, so as to avoid losing face again. Losing face in front of Linger really didn't feel good. "Then I'll lead the way in front. If Senior is tired, please understand that my cultivation is still weak and my speed is slow." Linger said with incomparable sincerity, and then led Tang Zheng along the small route, quickly advancing towards the Earth's core. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and criticized in his heart, "Little girl, your speed is slow. I really don't know what's fast. This is underground, not flat ground. If I didn't use all my skills, I wouldn't be able to keep up with you." To read a novel without mistakes, please visit Chapter 1636. Linger quickly moved forward, and a blazing aura gradually attacked them. Tian Chanzi was keenly aware of it, and hurriedly reminded, "Linger, the Earth's core is not far away." Linger said seriously, "I know, the main root of the Tree of Life extends all the way to the Earth's core. I've already sensed the aura of the Earth's core from the main root." Tian Chanzi raised his head and glanced. He did not know how far away they were from the surface, and even his divine sense could not extend so far. In the past, he had never thought that he would one day reach the Earth's core. After all, it was not a good place. Just the blazing heat of the Earth's core alone was enough to make him suffer. "Be careful later." Tian Chanzi did not forget to warn. Linger's original ginseng body was also like a person, but a miniature version. She hurriedly nodded and said, "I know, Senior." After saying that, her roots wrapped even tighter around Tang Zheng, pulling him to her side and moving down step by step. Crash! The sound of rolling waves sounded like the roar of a ferocious beast, but also like the explosion of thunder. It was breathtaking. "What's that sound?" Tian Chanzi's heart trembled, and he hurriedly asked. Linger did not answer, and like pushing away the clouds, she directly penetrated through the last layer of soil. Her eyes suddenly opened up, and a fiery red light illuminated her eyes. Tian Chanzi also followed closely behind, drilling a big hole in the last obstacle. With a plop, a rock fell from the hole. Gulp! A bubble appeared, and then the rock disappeared without a trace, melted into magma. But no one cared about all this. Tian Chanzi and Linger had already been deeply attracted and shocked by the scene in front of them. There was an endless lake filled with fiery red magma, and there was also a fountain of magma bubbling up in the middle of the lake, producing bubbles. After bursting with a gurgling sound, it emitted a blazing aura, filling this small space. The intense heat melted the surrounding rock walls, and the rock walls became as soft as chocolate. This hell-like scene was truly frightening, causing one's heart to involuntarily clench. But what was even more inconceivable was that a slender root extended down from the top of this space, straight into the pool, and was completely submerged by the fiery red magma. However, the strange thing was that the magma which was so hot that even steel and rock could not melt in an instant, did not melt the main root of the tree of life. This main root seemed to have a mysterious magic power. It safely extended into the magma and seemed to be absorbing the nutrients within. Specks of red light climbed up the main root and quickly passed through the main root to every root of the tree of life. Linger was particularly sensitive to this, especially when one of her roots was wrapped around the main root. She could clearly feel a surge of blazing energy flowing through the main root. This energy was extremely pure. Even though she was only separated by a layer, she could feel how extraordinary this energy was. After a long time, the two finally recovered from their shock. Tian Chanzi exclaimed, "So the Earth's core is actually like this." Linger was also filled with emotion. "Yes, it's really spectacular." "Quickly ask that kid, what should we do next?" Tian Chanzi urged. Linger made an O sound and quickly asked Tang Zheng, "Master, what should we do next?" Although Tang Zheng seemed to be unconscious, his divine sense also saw the scene of the Earth's core. His heart was unable to calm down for a long time, and he was also a little doubtful about the feasibility of his method. But in the end, he still defeated the trace of fear in his heart. Since it was recorded in the heavenly book, it definitely could not be wrong. Moreover, this was the only way now. He could only treat a dead horse as a living horse. Tang Zheng calmly instructed, "Put me in the Earth's core." "What? Put it in the Earth's core?" Linger screamed. She could not believe that Tang Zheng would actually say such a thing. Tian Chanzi was also shocked and shouted, "The Earth's core, could it be that you put it in the magma?" After saying that, Tian Chanzi could not help but shiver in his heart. Although Tian Chanzi admitted that Tang Zheng's physical body was extremely strong because he had cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell, it was still the magma from the Earth's core. It was even hotter than a volcanic eruption. Could he withstand it? Linger was also worried and advised while trembling with fear, "Master, you will be injured like this." Tang Zheng had already made up his mind. How could he change his mind so easily? He said indifferently, "Linger, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. How could I joke around with my life?" Hearing his solemn vow, Linger's heart wavered. She had always a close to blind trust and worship for Tang Zheng, so after thinking for a bit, she believed Tang Zheng's words. "All right, then, Master, be careful." With that, Linger slowly placed Tang Zheng into the boiling lake. "Assistant, Linger, what are you doing?" This scene shocked Tian Chanzi. He did not care about the blazing high temperature and hurriedly stopped Linger, stopping Tang Zheng. Linger patiently explained, "Senior, this is Master's decision. I have to follow his orders." "What kind of stupid decision is this? He's playing around with his life. He's used to messing around, so you should follow his lead." Tian Chanzi had stubbornly followed them down, just in case. He did not expect that he had really made the right choice. If he had really allowed these two youngsters to mess around, then in the end, not even Tang Zheng's corpse would be left. Tian Chanzi had promised to protect Tang Zheng, so how could he just sit by and watch this kind of thing happen, turning a blind eye? Linger did not expect Tian Chanzi to care so much about Tang Zheng, so she was stubborn and did not know what to do for a moment. Tang Zheng could not directly communicate with Tian Chanzi, so he was anxious and said to Linger, "Tell him that I've already cultivated the indestructible body, so I won't die so easily. Tell him not to worry." Linger immediately passed on the message, but Tian Chanzi did not let them go and said fiercely, "Kid, you can't mess around. Our people have already gone to find the Empyrean fairy, and she'll be back soon. At that time, your yin and yang will be harmonized, and everything will be fine, right? Why take this risk?" Tang Zheng knew that Tian Chanzi was worried about him and was moved, but he still firmly said, "It's better to rely on yourself than on others. I believe in my own judgment." Tian Chanzi stared at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. Although his eyes were closed, Tian Chanzi was still defeated and resentfully let them go. In this world, there really isn't anyone who messes around like you. Linger sighed in relief and quickly sent Tang Zheng into the magma. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the magma surged like a huge wave in the sea. The magma hit the surrounding walls, giving rise to a series of blue smoke and sizzling sounds. This lake full of magma underwent an unimaginable change, as if it had come alive in an instant. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1637. When Tian Chanzi and Ling saw this scene, they subconsciously stopped what they were doing and stared blankly at the churning magma. "What's going on?" Tian Chanzi muttered to himself. Ling was confused and said, "I don't know either." As soon as her voice fell, the main root of the tree of life began to shake violently. A blazing feeling came from the main root, causing one's heart to tremble. Shua! The two of them looked at the shaking main root at the same time. Tian Chanzi's heart moved, and he shouted, "Be careful!" Voila! Raging waves rose up from the lake, and the fiery red magma soared into the sky. A big guy flew out of the magma and fiercely pounced at the two of them. "What is that?" The two of them trembled and reacted at the same time. Even though Ling body was small, she was extremely nimble and had a lot of strength. She wrapped around Tang Zheng and flew to the side with a so sound, dodging this fierce attack. Shua! Tian Chanzi did not retreat. He unsheathed his treasure sword and directly slashed out with the Tai sword. Pung! With a loud sound, the Tai sword flew back into Tian Chanzi's hand. The thing wrapped in magma was also stunned in midair and stopped. However, Tian Chanzi and Ling clearly saw this thing. It was actually a strange beast, its whole body burning with raging flames. These flames were like its hair, awe-inspiring. The magma slid down from its body, but it did not hurt it at all. It was like rain falling from a person's body. "What is this?" Ling asked curiously. Tian Chanzi's eyes widened, as if his eyeballs were about to pop out. He stared at the strange beast without blinking, his eyes full of disbelief. Hearing Linger's question, he seemed to wake up from a dream. He was so scared that he shivered and screamed, "Fire Qilin! Is this the legendary Fire Qilin?" Tian Chanzi had heard of the legend of the fire unicorn, but he had only heard of its name and had never seen it in person. He thought that it was a mythical beast made up from nothing. Who would have thought that there really was a Fire Qilin in this world? It was just that it was hidden in the Earth's core. Normal people would never have the chance to see it. However, Linger had never heard of this name before. She muttered in bewilderment, "Fire Qilin. It seems to be very powerful." Tian Chanzi smiled bitterly in his heart. Of course it was very powerful. That was a legendary divine beast, a mysterious existence that was not inferior to the divine dragon. Whoosh! Tian Chanzi took a few deep breaths. He was very knowledgeable and had even seen the Dragon Clan. Why should he be so afraid of the Fire Qilin? Didn't it also have 4 claws? There was nothing to be afraid of. He kept trying to comfort himself, and finally, it worked a little. His mood gradually calmed down. The Fire Qilin shook its huge head and stared at the two of them with its bell-sized eyes. Finally, its gaze fell on the unconscious Tang Zheng. Whoosh! It stepped on the air and walked straight toward Tang Zheng. Ling screamed in fright and hurriedly pulled Tang Zheng to her side, afraid that he would fall into the Fire Qilin's hands. The Fire Qilin glared at Ling with dissatisfaction, as if asking why she was not cooperating. Then, its body flashed and flew toward Tang Zheng. "Don't hurt, master." Ling was shocked as she flew over in an attempt to help Tang Zheng out of this predicament. With a flash of light, Ling had turned into a human and hugged Tang Zheng. She used her back to resist the Fire Qilin, not giving a chance to hurt Tang Zheng. Bang! There was no sharp pain, as expected. Ling was pushed forward by a wave of heat. She stabilized her body with great difficulty. Turning her head, she saw Tian Chanzi and the Fire Qilin fighting. Tang Zheng did not expect that there would be a Fire Qilin in the core of the earth. But no matter who it was, they could not stop him from saving himself. Therefore, he made a prompt decision and ordered Ling, "Quickly throw me into the magma." Ling was originally at a loss. After hearing Tang Zheng's words, she seemed to have found her backbone. She nodded fiercely and loosened her hands. With a plop, Tang Zheng fell from her hands and fell straight into the magma, splashing red magma all over the sky. Tian Chanzi was fighting fiercely with the fire Qilin. After recovering from the initial shock, Tian Chanzi gritted his teeth and used all his skills to fight with the fire Qilin. There was no doubt that the fire Qilin was a legendary divine beast. Its power was quite great. After only a few moves, Tian Chanzi had already deeply felt and experienced its power. But he did not retreat. He was the only line of defense. There was no way to retreat. Hearing the plop, Tian Chanzi's heart trembled. He hurriedly turned his head and saw Tang Zheng being submerged in magma and quickly sinking. Immediately, his face turned ashen. He did not expect that after encountering such an unforeseen event, Tang Zheng would still be so stubborn. This time, it was really difficult to predict the danger. The fire Qilin also saw this scene and snorted. It seemed to be sneering complacently, laughing at Tang Zheng for overestimating himself. Tian Chanzi took a deep breath and simply ignored Tang Zheng. He had to deal with the fire Qilin first. Otherwise, he would die in the fire Qilin's hands before knowing whether Tang Zheng was alive or dead. Kill! Tian Chanzi roared. The Taiya sword revealed its sharpness and slashed out again. Immediately, the whistling sound of the sword resounded through the space, shaking people's souls. However, the fire Qilin's eyes showed contempt. It roared and sucked in the magma like a giant whale sucking in water. Walala, the magma was sucked into its mouth like water. Puff! It opened its mouth and spat at Tian Chanzi. The hot red magma was driven by the strong pressure and shot at Tian Chanzi like a sword released from a bow. Tian Chanzi hurriedly formed a sword sign with both hands. The Taiya sword buzzed and trembled as if it was crying. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Rays of sword light gathered in front of him and condensed into a sword wall. Kacha! The magma directly smashed the sword wall into pieces and surged towards Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi shouted and pushed forward with both hands. The Taiya sword was placed horizontally in front of his chest. The surging sword chi rushed out like a tide. Boom! With a loud sound, the space seemed to tremble. The Taiya sword finally blocked the impact of the magma. Roar, roar, roar. The fire Qilin seemed to be angry that its attack did not work. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of flame. It mixed with the magma and attacked the Taiya sword. The Taiya sword slowly turned red and was extremely hot. It was as if it was being refined by the high temperature. If it was not for Tian Chanzi's Jinqi, it was likely that it would have been refined. Tian Chanzi felt a wave of heat in his face. His hair and clothes were about to burn, especially his hair. He could already smell a burning smell. Damn it. Do you want me to become bald? Tian Chanzi cursed. I won't let you succeed. Taiya sword, man and sword as one. Tian Chanzi had also broken through the man and sword as one realm. Although he was not as good as Tang Zheng, his power was doubled. With a flash of light, he and the Taiya sword became one. The sword was the person, and the person was the sword. Whoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air, piercing through the magma and flames, and heading straight for the fire Qilin's head. The fire Qilin looked at it with disdain and waved its claws. A red light flashed on them. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Taiya sword was sent flying and slammed into the wall. The tip of the sword penetrated the wall and continued to tremble. Next to it, a human-shaped hole appeared in the wall. Tian Chanzi happened to be embedded in it. Translation. Chapter 1638. The fire Qilin swatted away Tian Chanzi with its claw, then turned around and aimed at Linger. Linger quickly calmed down and pointed forward with her slender hand. A vine flew out from between her fingers and, like a whip, ruthlessly lashed at the fire Qilin. Roar! The fire Qilin roared, and a ball of flames flew out from its mouth, burning the vines in an instant, causing the attack to collapse. Linger turned pale with fright and hurriedly retreated. However, This was the fire Cheelin's territory after all. It moved like the wind, bringing along a wave of heat as it pounced towards Linger. Whoosh! Whoosh! Vines flew out from between Linger's fingers and quickly condensed into a wall that glowed with a faint green light. Boom! The fire Cheelin crashed into the wall, causing it to tremble violently. Linger's face turned pale. Although she had broken through to the first tier of the demigod realm, she was still too weak compared to the fire Cheelin. Even Tian Chanzi was no match for it, let alone Linger. Kacha! A large hole was torn open in the wall. The fire Cheelin shook its body and rushed forward. In an instant, the wall shattered into pieces and fell apart. Linger had already retreated to the side of the main route. Seeing the fire Cheelin recklessly rushing over, she seized the main route and used it as a whip, ruthlessly whipping the fire Cheelin. Ha! A crisp sound rang out, clear and ear-piercing. The fire Cheelin was sent flying backwards, crashing into the wall and creating a huge crater. Rocks fell down with a crash. Linger was stunned by this scene. She looked at the main root of the Tree of Life in her hand in disbelief. The main root had been completely lifted out of the magma by her. She could even see the fiery red light at the end, which was tainted by the magma. Not only was the main root not afraid of the lava, it was actually so powerful that it could send the fire Cheelin flying. This was not only Linger's power, but also the main root's own divine power. The fire Cheelin leaped out from the wall with its hind legs and stood in the air. Balls of flames appeared under its four hooves as it glared at Linger and the main root in her hand. However, when its gaze fell on the main root, there was a hint of fear in its eyes. Linger noticed this, and she curiously looked at the main root in her hand. She couldn't see anything special about it, and it wasn't much different from a normal root. In fact, it was much smaller than a normal root. However, she did not dare to underestimate its divine might. She was like a drowning person who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She firmly grasped it in the palm of her hand and was unwilling to let go for a moment. At some point in time, Tian Chanzi had also climbed out of the pit. Seeing the two sides confronting each other, he asked in surprise, "Why doesn't it dare to attack?" Linger couldn't figure it out and guessed, "It seems to be afraid of the main root of the Tree of Life." Tian Chanzi was overjoyed and arrived beside Linger in a flash. He tried to take the main root and impatiently said, "Ha, ha, ha. The heavens have eyes. Then let's use the main root to deal with it." When his hand landed on the main root, he couldn't help but scream miserably. As if he had been electrocuted, he quickly withdrew his hand. Linger looked at him curiously and asked with concern, "Senior, what happened to you?" Tian Chanzi looked at the main root in fear and said with an expression as if he had seen a ghost, "There is a mysterious power on this main root. Didn't you notice? This power can release a powerful attack. Didn't you feel it?" Linger was confused and blankly shook her head. "I didn't feel it." The fire Cheelin looked at this scene without saying a word. Especially when Tian Chanzi was defeated, its mouth revealed a playful expression, as if it was mocking him for overestimating himself. Tian Chanzi's eyes turned and also saw the fire Cheelin's reaction. "See, I was right. It also thinks so." It was even more confused. She scratched her head and said in confusion, "But I didn't feel anything." Tian Chanzi and the fire Cheelin both revealed shocked and suspicious expressions. They couldn't guess why wasn't repelled by the main root of the Tree of Life. Heaven Monk thought hard, then had an idea, and said, "Could it be that because you are not a human or an animal, but a ginseng, you have something in common with the Tree of Life, so it did not reject you?" Linger opened her eyes wide and thought for a while. It seemed that this was really possible. She wanted to ask Tang Zheng if this was the case, but after shouting for a long time, there was no response. She remembered that since Tang Zheng's body fell into the magma, their telepathy seemed to have been cut off. It must be so. This is your unique advantage. Others can't compare to it. Tian Chanzi thought for a long time and said with certainty. Linger's face also showed a trace of joy. "Then we can fight against the fire Cheelin." Tian Chanzi didn't comment, and said with a smile, "At least, we can save our lives for the time being." Without this advantage, Tian Chanzi didn't have the confidence to save his life from the fire Qilin. Maybe his life would have been lost here. Roar! The fire Qilin saw that the two were unscrupulous and became angrier. Its two front hooves kept pawing in the air, and a burning feeling hit them in the face. The fire Qilin launched another attack. Tian Chanzi hurriedly urged, "Quickly, use the main root to whip it." Ling waved the main root, and with a whoosh, the main root drew a whistling sound in the air and whipped the fire Qilin. Roar! Sparks splashed out from the fire Qilin's body. It cried out in pain and flew out again, unable to get close. But this thoroughly angered it. Not only did it not stop attacking, but it roared even more mournfully and angrily. Its hind legs kicked off the wall and rushed over again like a cannonball. Tian Chanzi excitedly danced and commanded proudly, "Whip it left, right, center, yes, whip its head. Let it know how powerful it is." In the eyes of the two, the fire Qilin had long since shed its mysterious light. It was as if it had turned into an ordinary wild beast, allowing the small whip to whip it as it pleased. Linger could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The Tree of Life's main root was really powerful. It was not inferior to a sacred tool. It could actually release such a powerful divine power that even the fire Qilin could not get close. Tian Chanzi's hands were itching, but he could not control the main root. He could only watch enviously as Ling waved the main root to attack. He could not help but think that if the main root was refined into a magical treasure, its power would be heaven-defying. But this could only be a thought. Without the main root, how could the Tree of Life survive? It was practically destroying the world. There were many more marks on the fire Qilin's body. They were all left behind by the main root. Although it was very unruly at first, continuously attacking. But gradually, its arrogance gradually decreased. Because it was afraid of the main root, it had no way to break through its opponent's defense. Splash! Suddenly, the magma violently rolled, attracting the fire Qilin's attention. It immediately stopped attacking and opened its bell-like eyes, staring at the magma suspiciously. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1639. Rumble. A long line of bubbles appeared in the magma. Crash! Huge waves surged out from the magma. This scene immediately attracted the three pairs of eyes, and all kinds of complicated thoughts arose in their hearts. Heaven Monk roared. He was the first to react, pouncing straight towards the magma. With a plop sound, the magma splashed into the sky and disappeared without a trace. Tian Chanzi and Linger looked at each other in dismay, and both of them were worried. Linger said uneasily, "Senior, the fire Qilin rushed down, so what about Master? Master can't move, so won't he be killed by the fire Qilin?" Tian Chanzi was silent, because he couldn't make up his mind. As for whether Tang Zheng was alive or dead, he couldn't guess. He took a deep breath, looked at Linger's anxious and worried face, and advised without confidence, "Linger, don't worry, that brat won't die so easily." Although he said so, he couldn't believe his own words. This was because he was completely unable to understand how Tang Zheng could survive under these conditions, especially under the precondition of having the fire Qilin as a huge threat. Linger bit her lips, hesitated, and said, "I want to go down and save Master." "Don't, that's not a joke. This is magma. You'll melt if you go down, and not even your bones will be left." Tian Chanzi hurriedly held her back, afraid that she would do something stupid. This little girl was really willing to give up her life for Tang Zheng. How could this brat's charm be so great? Tian Chanzi kept cursing in his heart, firmly holding on to her, not letting go. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, the sound of wind came from the hole above them, and several figures descended from the sky. A fragrant smell assailed their nostrils. It was Feng Shi and the others. They were worried about Tang Zheng's safety, so they chased after him at the same time. They were really not afraid of encountering danger. Fortunately, the space in the Earth's core was big enough, so even if there were a few people standing there, it didn't feel crowded. Tian Chanzi, on the other hand, felt a headache coming on. He looked helplessly at the group of orioles and swallows and said, "Why did you all come down to? Don't you know how dangerous this place is?" A few people's gazes swept around, clearly looking for Tang Zheng's figure, but in the end, they did not find him at all. Yi Dingdang was anxious and took the lead to ask, "Where is Tang Zheng? Where did he go?" The others echoed, "Yes, where did he go?" Ling Er pointed at the boiling magma below and said, "Master went down." Ah! Cries of surprise rose and fell one after another. Everyone's faces were filled with shock as they asked, "How did he fall?" Master requested to go down. Ling Er explained he wants to absorb the yang qi from the earth's core to achieve the effect of extreme yang, producing yin. Isn't this nonsense? What will be left if he goes down? Everyone was anxious. Fang Shishir bit her lips until a trace of blood appeared. Without saying a word, she directly rushed into the magma. Tian Chanzi saw this and shouted, "Stop!" He had no choice but to let go of Ling Er and fly down. He grabbed Fang Shishir and said earnestly, "Disciple, you are seeking death. Do you know that? If he's not here, then what's the point of me living?" Fang Shishir said painfully. Tian Chanzi felt a headache coming on. He sternly ordered, "I am your master. Don't tell me you don't even listen to your master's words? Live well for me. You're not allowed to commit suicide." As his voice fell, another person fell down. Tian Chanzi anxiously shouted and hurriedly pulled the other person, shouting, "Do you also want to commit suicide?" Yi Dingdang said with red eyes, "I am not your disciple. I don't need to listen to you." Tian Chanzi was so angry that he stamped his feet. He looked around and found that the others seemed to have the idea of rushing down. Immediately, he flew into a rage and said, "Do you think that this is suicide? You are so wrong. Are you all idiots? Have you forgotten that Tang Zheng can always turn danger into safety? Since this is his own choice, his own decision, then he must have confidence. If you all rush down and you all die, then what's the point of him living? Do you want him to live in self-blame and pain for the rest of his life? Is this the so-called love you keep on talking about?" Tian Chanzi did not leave any face. Every word was like a gem, piercing blood, enlightening the apathetic. Everyone was suddenly stunned and stopped thinking of rushing into the magma. Fang Shishir said with grievance, "Master, I was wrong. I won't rush down." Yi Dingding nodded and lowered her head, saying, "I was wrong too. Let go of my hand." The despair in the other's eyes lessened a lot, and a little hope was ignited. Tian Chanzi was relieved. The words just now were so enlightening that he actually believed it a little. "Tang Zheng, you are a jinx. Knowing that so many beauties are willing to die for you, your life is really worth it." Tian Chanzi's heart was filled with emotion. Although he kept encouraging Tang Zheng to absorb other people's pure yin energy, Tang Zheng did not stop at the surface. Instead, he used sincerity in exchange for sincerity. The results proved that Tang Zheng was right. When a person gave sincerity, they would often receive sincerity. If it was fake or even used, how could there be so many gains? Everyone dispelled the idea of dying for love and stared at the rolling magma. They all had the same question in their hearts. What happened to Tang Zheng? What kind of scene was under the magma? Taking advantage of everyone calming down, Tian Chanzi told everyone about what happened just now, so that the fire Qilin would not appear and cause everyone to panic. Hearing that the fire Qilin had also entered the magma, everyone became even more worried. The rolling magma blocked everyone's line of sight, but it could not stop the fire Qilin. It was like a fish in water as it moved stealthily through the magma, looking for the source of the commotion. It was very puzzled. There were actually people who could survive in the magma. This was completely out of its expectations. It could move freely in the magma because it was a natural divine beast. It accompanied the magma and absorbed the energy in the Earth's core to survive. The magma was like water to a fish and air to a human. The deeper the magma went, the brighter the red light became. It was even a little dazzling, but it did not have any effect on the fire Cheelin. It even widened its eyes and stared straight at the fiery red light. Its pupils were also dyed red, but it did not feel dazzling at all. Suddenly, the fire Cheelin's pupils shrank. It finally found its target and revealed an expression of relief. This was because it saw that the target was rapidly melting. His muscles had already disappeared, leaving behind only the white bones. At this moment, even the bones were melting bit by bit. The fire Cheelin let out a strange laugh, as if laughing at the other party for overestimating himself and daring to step into the Earth's core. Did he really think that he was the same as the fire Cheelin? Now, not even dregs were left. It was satisfied to admire this scene. It was only waiting for it to completely melt. Then it would go up and take care of the others. But when it thought of the main root of the tree of life, it had a headache. In addition, it had a question in its heart. Since this person was about to melt, how did the magma's movement just now cause it? To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1640. The fire Cheelin could not understand, and did not have time to think about it, because the sudden change attracted its attention. That set of white bones had already completely melted, but there were still 4 things left. A heart that kept beating nonstop, a meridian that ran through the body, a treasured sword that glittered with cold light, and a spherical object. This object was the Purple Mansion. It was completely purple and slightly transparent, and could be vaguely seen. The Yuaning was quietly lying inside. Huh. The fire Cheelin opened its eyes wide. It had never seen such a miraculous scene. It could not help but scratch its head, not understanding the situation. It took large strides forward and extended its claws, trying to test it. But before its claws could touch the target, the hidden profound sword burst out with a resplendent and sharp sword light, letting out a resounding sword cry. The hidden profound sword had a spirit and sword spirit. When it realized that its master was in danger, it automatically protected its master and instinctively launched a counterattack. Shwa! A ray of light slashed towards the fire Cheelin. Pung! The fire Cheelin waved its claws to block, and coincidentally collided with the sword light, splashing out a long string of sparks. The fire Cheelin roared. Its underestimation led to serious consequences. The sharp pain from its claws made it very angry. When it looked carefully, its claws cracked open. Wasn't this plucking the hair from a tiger's head? If this could be tolerated, what could not? The fire Cheelin roared at the hidden, profound sword. The surrounding magma quickly gathered like a big water ball, and with a whoosh, it flew out. Boom! The magma was about to hit the beating heart, but the hidden, profound sword flew out. A curtain of light fell, protecting the heart and the main meridian. This main meridian was formed from the dragon vein. It was extraordinary, so even the magma could not melt it. The sword light blocked the magma's attack. In an instant, there seemed to be a vacuum in the center of the earth. The fire Cheelin was thoroughly angry. Ever since it was born, it had never seen such a scene. It was really shocked and angry. Its divine might was seriously challenged. How preposterous! Whoosh! It dove down towards the hidden, profound sword like a ray of light. Not only was it fast, but it was also very fierce. Boom! With a loud sound, the magma violently rolled, setting off a huge wave. Whoosh! Huge waves soared into the sky. The people outside were shocked and hurriedly hid in the cave. They watched as the magma melted everything in its path. The surrounding rock walls melted, and the space in the core of the earth became even more spacious and huge. Everyone turned pale with fright, not understanding what was going on. Tian Chanzi had an idea and said, "That's great." The others looked at him blankly, but a few smart people gradually understood and showed joy. Li Xiaotian couldn't wait and said, "It must be Tang Zheng, otherwise there wouldn't be such a big movement. He's definitely not dead." Everyone suddenly realized that this sentence had given them great hope. Just as Tian Chanzi had predicted, Tang Zheng would not die so easily. Everyone stretched their necks, trying to see through the magma. "Then what should we do?" Lu Qingmei asked worriedly. Tian Chanzi hesitated for a moment and shook his head regretfully. There's nothing we can do. We can only pray that Tang Zheng can deal with this difficult situation. Immediately, everyone's expression became gloomy. They silently prayed for Tang Zheng in their hearts. Many people had the same thought. If the Empyrean fairy was here, perhaps they wouldn't be so helpless. Originally, many people were somewhat against the Empyrean fairy and didn't want her to join their ranks. But after encountering such a situation, this kind of idea couldn't help but waver. Although Tang Zheng had many women by his side, none of them had a very powerful cultivation. They could even stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The Empyrean fairy was the most suitable candidate. Was it really necessary to let the Empyrean fairy mix into everyone's team and become Tang Zheng's right-hand woman? In the magma, the fire Qilin's attack didn't completely break the hidden mysterious sword's defense. In fact, the hidden mysterious sword was in imminent danger. After all, it didn't have a master to control it. It could only rely on its instincts to counterattack. Although its power wasn't weak, it was still not enough to deal with a mythical beast like the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin stopped and opened its eyes wide. It stared at the hidden mysterious sword and behind it. Suddenly, its pupils shrank as it saw a very magical scene. Bloodlines spread out from the Qi Yu's heart like blood vessels. They quickly swam around Tang Zheng's body and finally reached the Zifu, completely enveloping it. The Zifu seemed to be wrapped in a bloody light. The purple light was suffused with a red color. It was very magical. Whoosh! Another ray of light emitted from the main meridians and wrapped around these blood vessels. Little bits of flesh attached to the bloody light started to grow. With the hidden mysterious sword light wrapped around it, there was no magma that could hurt it. It was the best protection. Although the fire Qilin didn't understand what was going on, it realized that the situation was not good. It couldn't let the opponent continue. Roar! It roared and its four hooves ignited. With a whoosh, it rushed toward the hidden mysterious sword. The hidden profound sword hummed as it once again tried to defend against the attack, but in the end, it was unable to do so. With a cautious sound, its defense crumbled as the sword light shattered into pieces. Magma flowed towards Tang Zheng from all directions. ZZZT, ZZZT, ZZZT. Tang Zheng was completely wrapped in the magma. Waves of white gas appeared around him, but it didn't stop this at all. His body was rapidly growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the contrary, the red light in the magma was absorbed by Tang Zheng. It was like a thin line wrapped around Tang Zheng's body. In a place of extreme yang qi was abundant. He was absorbing the yang qi in the earth's core. It was all gathered toward his body, as if it was going to fill his body. This was Tang Zheng's plan. He was going to die and fight to live. Then, he would use a large amount of yang qi to create yin qi. This would allow him to survive. The fire Qilin couldn't understand this scene, but it knew that this scene was harmful to it. It relied on absorbing yang qi to increase its cultivation and power. Now, someone was trying to steal food from the tiger's mouth. How could it agree? Suddenly, its eyes almost popped out. Its pupils seemed to be on fire. It kept roaring and rushed toward Tang Zheng. Whoosh! The hidden mysterious sword was eager to protect its master. How could it let it succeed? It quickly returned to defend. The two sides fought fiercely again. As time passed, Tang Zheng's body grew more and more. The fire Qilin didn't have time to think. Its attack power increased greatly. Clang! In the end, the hidden mysterious sword couldn't stop the fire Qilin and was sent flying. Then, the fire Qilin aggressively rushed toward Tang Zheng with a belly full of anger. Its sharp claws were completely revealed. They flickered with a fiery red light. The flames on its body also whizzed out. Under its threat, Tang Zheng was in danger. It seemed that he didn't have the power to resist. The magma was separated by itself. There was no way to resist its attack. Buzz! The hidden mysterious sword was eager to protect its master. It cried loudly, but there was no way. It was too late to save him. To read the latest novel, please visit the website Chapter 1641. The fire Qilin's flames enveloped Tang Zheng as if it wanted to burn him to ashes. Pop! The fire Qilin's sharp claws followed closely behind and ruthlessly slashed at Tang Zheng. The magma and flames parted on their own as they were unable to withstand the power of the claws. The fire Qilin's eyes flashed with complacency, as if it could foresee the scene of its opponent being split into two by its sharp claws. However, things did not go as it wished. Its claws seemed to have encountered an unbreakable layer of defense. With a dang sound, it was actually bounced back. This scene shocked the fire Qilin. Its eyes widened even more as it was unable to accept this scene. However, its reaction was lightning fast. The second round of attacks came unexpectedly, ferocious and lightning fast. Bang! Its claws accurately hit Tang Zheng. Layers of waves gushed out from his body and spread in all directions. Circles of ripples also appeared in the magma. This movement set off a huge wave outside, scaring the others so much that they did not dare to leave the cave. However, in the next second, the fire Qilin's eyes seemed to be about to pop out. Its target was actually unharmed. On the contrary, more and more flesh appeared on his body, as if it was about to finish growing. In addition, his body was densely packed with red lines. These were not blood vessels, but the yang qi absorbed from the magma in the Earth's core. The fire Qilin could not be more familiar with this. It angrily roared. This uninvited guest actually dared to snatch food from its mouth while it was powerless to do anything. It turned its eyes and suddenly opened its bloody mouth, aimed at Tang Zheng, and bit down. Its mouth quickly grew larger, and not long after, it turned into an existence like a black hole. With a so sound, it swallowed Tang Zheng in one bite. Buzz! Seeing this scene, the hidden mysterious sword was angry and anxious. That was its master, and it was actually swallowed just like that. How could it sit and watch? Whoosh! The sword light expanded as the hidden mysterious sword instinctively activated its power to the extreme. It turned into a ray of light. Even in the magma's core, the sword light was exceptionally dazzling, completely suppressing the other rays of light. The fire Qilin turned its head and discovered the terrifying attack of the hidden mysterious sword. It gathered all its power to defend. Rumble! The surrounding magma seemed to have a life of its own as it quickly converged towards the fire Qilin. In an instant, it turned into a thick wall of magma, giving off a feeling of being as solid as a fortress. Boom! This defense blocked the hidden mystic sword. The hidden mystic sword was pressed against the lava. Every inch it moved forward was extremely difficult, as if it had used up all of its strength. The magma was being worn down, but the hidden mystic sword was still moving forward. The fire Qilin was not worried about the hidden sword at all. Instead, it was immensely proud of itself, like a victorious general, daring to invade its territory. Now you know how powerful it is. It entered its stomach and became its meal. Then, it had to return to the surface and get rid of the other fish that had escaped the net. Whoosh! It rushed up, and the magma parted like seawater. The hidden mystic sword seemed to have sensed its intention and tried to change its direction to attack it. However, how could it let the hidden Xian sword succeed? With a thought, the magma surrounded the hidden Xian sword from all directions. Like a cage, it trapped the hidden Xian sword in an instant, sealing off all of its escape routes. There was no way to stop its movements. Whoosh! The magma parted on its own, and the fire Qilin rushed up to the sky, turning into a ray of light. It rushed to the surface of the magma and saw its target in the cave. Tian Shanzi and the others had been nervously watching the situation. When they saw a figure rush out, their eyes widened, and their hearts could not help but tighten. But when they saw clearly that it was the fire Qilin, they were shocked and terrified. An ominous premonition attacked their hearts. The fire Qilin rushed out safe and sound. Could it be that Tang Zheng had met with an accident? The flame of hope that had been ignited was extinguished in an instant. Their eyes dimmed, and they stared blankly at the fire Qilin. The flame of anger gradually burned in the depths of their eyes, and quickly filled their eyes. Tang Zheng had been killed by the fire Qilin, so they must avenge him. Even if they had to die, they would not hesitate. So one by one, they did not shrink back. With a whoosh, they flew out of the cave and stood in the air, confronting the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene and was really frightened. He shouted loudly, "Come back!" But no one listened to him. Each and every one of the girls was not inferior to the men. They were valiant and heroic, and they angrily confronted the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi sighed with mixed feelings and said, "Ah, crazy. All of them are crazy. They really are a group of people who are not afraid of death. I have lived for more than 1,000 years. It seems that I have lived to the end. Tang Zheng, you stinking brat, you have really killed me." After saying this, he also flew out of the cave in a flash. He stood side by side with the girls and stared at the fire Qilin without fear. The fire Qilin's eyes showed contempt, but there was also a trace of confusion. It was very clear that these people were not its opponents, but they were not afraid of death at all. They did not know how to run away, but dared to confront it. This kind of suicidal behavior was unreasonable in its eyes, but did not look into it. Instead, its eyes showed a cold light, as if it was going to melt these people into nothing. "Kill!" the girls shouted in unison. They all attacked at the same time. All kinds of attacks were sent towards the fire Qilin's body. The fire Qilin's eyes were frivolous. It did not care at all. The only person it was on guard against was Linger. It was very afraid of the main root of the tree of life in her hands. This was the so-called mutual promotion and restraint. Among the things in the Earth's core, only the main root could restrain the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was also very clear about this point. Therefore, it took the lead to attack Linger. It had to get rid of this most troublesome target first. Then the others would naturally not be a concern. It ignored the other people's attacks. Its whole body was covered in raging flames. Once those attacks came close to the flames, they would turn into nothing. There was no way to threaten it. Step by step, it approached Linger. It was like a tiger watching its prey. Its eyes were also firmly locked onto her. Linger grasped the main root tightly. Her palms were sweating. With a shout, the main root was like a whip, fiercely lashing out. The fire Qilin was always on guard. It was accumulating power and waiting to attack. How could it be hit so easily? It dodged with a whoosh. The main root whipped on top of the rolling magma. The Earth's core seemed to be split into two. The magma automatically parted to two sides, revealing the scene in the depths of the Earth's core. The scene in the Earth's core attracted many people's attention. They only saw a sword light flash past. The hidden profound sword flew up. The main root's attack even drew away the magma that was confining it. The hidden profound sword escaped and soared into the sky. It directly slashed towards the fire Qilin, as if it was an irreconcilable enmity. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1642. Everyone noticed the movement of the hidden profound sword and was shocked. The relationship between the hidden profound sword and Tang Zheng could not be clearer. Now that only the hidden profound sword was left, didn't that mean that Tang Zheng met with an accident? Originally, everyone still had a trace of luck in their hearts, but now it was completely gone. Everyone's expression was extremely desperate. Whoosh! The hidden Xian sword slashed towards the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin's two claws moved forward and grabbed the hidden Xian sword. The flames from its claws and the sword light from the hidden Xian sword suppressed each other. Roar! Suddenly, the fire Qilin let out a shocking roar. The flames on its claws increased explosively and suppressed the sword light of the hidden profound sword. It caused the hidden profound sword's attack to deviate. The hidden profound sword brushed past the fire Qilin and flew out like a meteor. Boom! The hidden profound sword shot into the rock wall, leaving behind a big hole. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. No one knew how deep it flew before it disappeared. Seeing this scene, everyone's heart trembled. Without prior agreement, they shouted themselves hoarse, "Kill!" Waves of angry shouts resounded through the Earth's core. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Multicolored treasures once again greeted the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was not afraid of everyone's attacks. The only thing it was afraid of was the main root, especially when it saw the main root split the Earth's core magma in two. That overflowing power and aura made it even more afraid. Whoosh! The main root flew back and once again whipped towards the fire Qilin. The other people's attacks also arrived unexpectedly. The fire Qilin kicked the air and directly crashed into the multicolored treasures. Dang, dang, dang. A series of muffled sounds rang out. The treasures flew out randomly. There were even treasures that fell into the Earth's core magma and melted into liquid, completely destroyed. The treasures being destroyed or damaged made many people feel the same way. It was as if they were struck by lightning. One after another, their faces turned pale. The fire Qilin's attack was not only that. It turned into a flame and flew past everyone with a whoosh. Everyone tried to dodge, but there was no way to dodge. In front of the fire Qilin, they were like children without the strength to truss a chicken. Pung, 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 one after another, graceful figures were sent flying, crashing into the walls in disarray. Only then did they stop, spitting out blood. There were even some who almost fell into the lava, their lives hanging by a thread. Screams and cries rang out everywhere. Although everyone was prepared to die, the reality still deeply shocked them. He was filled with regret for being unable to withstand a single blow. Only Tian Chanzi and Linger were lucky enough to escape. Tian Chanzi relied on the Taiya sword in his hand to barely resist the fire Kirin. Linger took the initiative to attack, but the fire Kirin didn't want to fight, so she couldn't do anything. The power of the main root was great, but did not have its own consciousness. Linger's cultivation was much lower than the fire Qilin's, so when the fire Qilin was on full alert, she could not really threaten the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was in high spirits as it looked at its defeated opponents. It shook its head and wagged its tail, and its eyes were filled with contempt. Linger saw that her companions were being humiliated and became anxious. Her attacks became more and more chaotic, giving the fire Qilin an opportunity. The fire Qilin looked for an opening, and a flame flashed in its eyes. It attacked like thunder, sweeping out its claws. Linger was swept away. If not for the main root's defense, her head would have been cut off. This thrilling scene made people scream loudly. Their hearts were in their throats, and their breathing seemed to have stopped. In the end, Tian Chanzi was the only one left. His palms were sweating, and his eyes gradually turned from panic to determination. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Laozi will also risk it all for you. In the next life, I will also be a good man. Tang Zheng, you better remember, this life of mine is for you." Swoosh! The Taiya sword soared into the sky and turned into a huge sword light, almost occupying the entire space and shrouding the fire Qilin's head. The fire Qilin's mouth made a whistling sound. Apparently, it was angry. Its eyes were burning with flames, and the flames on its body were also rising. It was not inferior to the Taiya sword at all. Cut! Tian Chanzi roared, and the Taiya sword fell down heavily. The fire Qilin soared into the sky, and the flames on its head soared into the sky, turning into a huge claw. Clang! With a loud sound, the shockwave spread in all directions and hit the wall, causing the rocks to rustle and fall down. Puff! Tian Chanzi spat out a mouthful of blood, and his expression became gloomy. He staggered back, and only stopped when he hit the rock again. The fire Qilin's momentum was like a rainbow, and its arrogance was monstrous. Although it also retreated a lot, and only then did it resolve the attack of the Taiya sword, it still won. It looked contemptuously at Tian Chanzi and the others, as if it wanted to give the last blow. Everyone was defeated, and they looked at each other in dismay. Their faces were ashen, but no one retreated. They looked like they were ready to sacrifice themselves. Their hope had been completely shattered. Without Tang Zheng, there was not much meaning in living. The fire Qilin approached the crowd step by step. Seeing that no one retreated, its eyes revealed a puzzled look, as if it did not understand why this group of people was not afraid of death. Fang Shishir could not help but hold Yi Dingdong's hand tightly. Yi Dingdong looked at her, nodded slightly, clenched her teeth, and then held Lu Qingmei's hand. Lu Qingmei nodded her head in tacit understanding. Her eyes were red, and her expression was resolute. She then held Marshall's hand. Marshall turned his head to look at Li Xiaotian. The two of them had always been in a competitive relationship. Since they were young, one was the head disciple of the martial sect, and the other was the holy maiden of Li Palace. They were both outstanding people in their sex, and were also the focus of everyone's attention. Naturally, they also became the targets of comparison. You chase and I chase, each with their own advantages and disadvantages, each with their own gains and losses. In fact, on the matter of Tang Zheng, the two of them also had the intention of competing. One wanted to control the Li Palace, while the other wanted to stay in Dianan and share Tang Zheng's worries. However, at this moment, the barrier in their hearts had collapsed. They had buried the hatchet and become comrades in arms. Therefore, Marshall naturally held Li Xiaotian's hand. Li Xiaotian was not afraid. Her expression was indifferent, as if even if the sky collapsed, to her, her expression would not change. Instead, a mysterious smile appeared on her face. Li Xiaotian took the opportunity to grab Linger's hand. Linger's heart tightened and then relaxed. She looked at Li Xiaotian, nodded her head, and took a deep breath. She no longer had the main root in her hand. In that attack, the main root had already flown out of her hand. The fire Qilin did not give her a chance to get close to the main root. Therefore, her advantage had been completely obliterated. However, her heart was not lonely, because with a few good sisters, even if they went to the Yellow Springs, they would not be lonely. In fact, they could even reunite with Tang Zheng. When they thought of this, they did not have the slightest bit of fear. Each and every one of them was unafraid of death. Tian Chanzi's gaze swept past them one by one. His mood was extremely agitated, as if he was also infected by their imposing manner. He straightened his back, puffed out his chest, and faced the approaching fire Qilin. He was unafraid of death. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1643. The fire Qilin closed in step by step until it was only inches away from the crowd. The large mouth spat out a blazing aura that hit their faces, causing them to feel a burning pain. The fire Qilin moved its front two hooves, as if it was preparing to launch its final charge. So, it turned into a flame and fiercely pounced towards the crowd. That rainbow-like aura caused everyone's liver and gallbladder to tremble, as if their hearts were about to rush out of their chests. It caused everyone's breathing to become heavy and extremely unsmooth. Everyone's eyes were wide open as the fire Qilin's figure rapidly enlarged in their eyes. In the next second, it seemed as if they would be swallowed by that bloody mouth. The fire Qilin believed that victory was in its grasp and that there would not be any more variables. Suddenly, its body stiffened as it slammed on the brakes and stopped in midair, only a short distance away from the crowd. Everyone was shocked, as they did not know why the fire Qilin stopped in front of them. Could it be that it wanted to taunt them? Was there a need? Everyone stared at the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin's body was covered in flames as it fiercely struggled and roared with all its might. Roar! A scorching wave of air rushed out from its mouth and swept towards the crowd like a fiery tornado. Everyone was blown away by the wind, but they keenly noticed that the roar seemed to be filled with pain and struggle. What was going on? They did not know. After all, the fire Qilin had the upper hand, so it should not have gone crazy halfway. The fire Qilin rolled in midair, bringing with it a large amount of flames, as if the air had been ignited. At the same time, the magma below also began to roll, setting off waves after waves that were shocking to the core. Rays of fiery red light converged towards the fire Qilin from all directions, especially the rays of light that floated out from the magma. They were like ribbons that completely converged on the fire Qilin's body. The fire Qilin kept roaring, Its voice was like thunder that spread throughout the space, rumbling without stopping. Everyone could not help but cover their ears as this deafening sound caused their hearts to sway and their minds to fall into disarray. Something seems to have happened to the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi had a flash of inspiration as he thoughtfully said. The others deeply agreed, as everyone could see that something was wrong. The fire Qilin's unforeseen event was already very clear. But what kind of unforeseen event could actually cause the powerful fire Qilin to become like this? Linger stared at the churning lava and the red light that surrounded the fire Qilin. Her heart stirred as she asked, "Do you think it's Master Tang Zheng?" Everyone was shocked. There was no other explanation for all these changes. The only explanation was probably Tang Zheng. Is it him? Everyone was skeptical. Linger, on the other hand, was even more convinced. She nodded stubbornly. "I believe that Master must have done something. Wasn't he already gone?" This was the question in everyone's mind. However, there was a strong impulse in his heart. He would rather believe Linger's words and believe that Tang Zheng had done something. The fire Qilin continued to struggle in midair. The flames on its body were actually extinguished, shrinking inward and disappearing into its body. Only the streaks of red light continued to converge on the fire Qilin from all directions. They turned into thousands of threads that completely wrapped around the fire Qilin's body, causing its struggle to become slower and slower. Only its deafening roar was still ringing out. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the wall. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw that the sound from the wall was getting louder and louder. It was as if something was about to rush out. What is it? This question popped up in everyone's mind at the same time. Boom! Rocks flew everywhere. A large hole appeared in the wall. A streak of light flew out from the hole. Together with the rocks that were flying everywhere, it carried a force of 10,000 pounds and pierced towards the fire Qilin. Everyone saw this streak of light. It was very familiar. Cries of surprise rang out one after another. The hidden mysterious sword. The hidden mysterious sword was originally slapped into the rock by the fire Qilin and disappeared without a trace. No one would have thought that it would fly out again. Moreover, its attack power was so strong that it shocked everyone. The hidden mysterious sword shook everyone's spirit. They all thought of one thing at the same time. In this world, only Tang Zheng could control the hidden mysterious sword, coupled with the strange reaction of the fire Qilin. Could it be that all of this was done by Tang Zheng? Otherwise, it did not make sense. This meant that Tang Zheng was not dead. Before everyone could fully understand what was going on, the hidden mysterious sword had already fiercely pierced into the fire Qilin. Previously, the fire Qilin could dodge the attack of the hidden mysterious sword, but this time, it was impossible. Its movements were restricted, and the attack of the hidden mysterious sword was so fast and fierce. How could he dodge the attack? The hidden mysterious sword pierced into the fire Qilin's body, and it roared angrily again, struggling nonstop. However, the red light that wrapped around its body firmly bound it, and there was no way for it to break free. The hidden mysterious sword did not stop. Instead, it slowly entered the fire Qilin's body. In the end, it even disappeared into the fire Qilin's body. Seeing that, Li Xiaotian had an idea. With a flash of light in his hand, he knocked an arrow and aimed the sun-shooting arrow at the fire Qilin. The sun-shooting arrow and the heaven-shocking bow were sacred tools with extraordinary power, but that also depended on the person. In the past, they could kill the soul of the golden crow, but when facing the fire Qilin, Li Xiaotian's cultivation was still unable to hurt it. In the end, he followed in everyone's footsteps and lost to the fire Qilin. This was not because the sacred tool was not good enough, but because the cultivation of the person using the sacred tool was too different from the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was a divine beast, not inferior to the dragon clan. This fire Qilin had cultivated in the earth's core for who knows how many years, so its strength was naturally extraordinary. This was why it was so easy to win despite being outnumbered. But that was then, and this was now. At this moment, the fire Qilin was already injured by the hidden mysterious sword, and its strength was greatly reduced. Li Xiaotian saw the opportunity and used the sun-shooting arrow to attack. Wong. The bowstring trembled, and the sun-shooting arrow left the bowstring quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly shooting into the fire Qilin's body. This time, it had no way to dodge. Yay! Seeing that the sun-shooting arrow had hit the fire Qilin, Li Xiaotian could not help but wave his fist, so excited that his cheeks were flushed. Seeing this, Tian Chanzi could not sit still and wait for death. Dragging his tired body, he shouted, "Attack! Take this opportunity and attack it fiercely!" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Streaks of colorful magic treasures dragged long tails of flames in the air, like meteors hitting the fire Qilin at the same time. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of violent explosions erupted from the fire Qilin's body, and the sky was filled with light shooting in all directions, shaking the mountains and the earth. Linger did not stay idle. Her figure flashed and once again grabbed the main root of the tree of life, shaking the main root, as if shaking out a few flowers. With a whoosh, the main root wrapped around the fire Qilin and tied it up like a dumpling. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1644. The fire Qilin suffered repeated attacks and was riddled with wounds. There were even a few large holes on its body. It was also confined by the main root of the tree of life and could not move at all. The hidden mysterious sword merged into its body, but the sword light came out of its body and became more brilliant and sharp. Thousands of different lights wrapped around the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin roared again and stretched its neck. Its body straightened. Suddenly, the roar stopped abruptly, as if someone was stuck in its throat, and it could not make a single sound. What was going on? Everyone was stunned. Was it going to die just like that? Was it really that simple? A crack appeared on the fire Qilin's armor-like scales. Then, like a spider web, the cracks quickly spread and covered its entire body in a short while. It was like an exquisite piece of porcelain that had been hit and cracked inch by inch. This scene deeply shocked everyone. Everyone was frightened and stared with their eyes wide open. They did not understand what was going on. However, they seemed to have a feeling that something was about to happen. Boom! A loud sound came from the fire Qilin's body, as if something had cracked and exploded. A look of despair appeared in the fire Qilin's eyes. The red light that was originally wrapped around the fire Qilin spread into its body through the cracks and disappeared as if it was absorbed by something. The red light was the yang qi essence contained in the Earth's core. It had reached a level that could be seen with the naked eye and was also a delicacy for the fire Qilin. However, at this moment, although the yang qi essence entered its body, it was not used by the fire Qilin. Instead, it was absorbed by someone else. Not only that, the fire Qilin also found that the yang qi essence in its body was being consumed bit by bit, as if it was being sucked away by a huge attraction. Absorbing the essence from its body was equivalent to nibbling away its life bit by bit. It was needless to say how difficult it was to achieve this. The fire Qilin never thought that it would be like this, but it was really happening. Its liver and gallbladder were torn apart, and it truly experienced intense fear. Its senses were much sharper than other people's, and it quickly understood why all of this had happened. It was extremely regretful that it had swallowed that person in one gulp. Without a doubt, the source of all this was that person. It was definitely him who was causing trouble. Otherwise, how could he have ended up in such a sorry state? It was even more impossible for him to be struck by those powerful magic treasures and lose half his life. It was even more impossible for him to resist the other party's encroachment. It still wanted to struggle, but it couldn't move at all. It could only let the other party nibble away at it. Its deduction was correct. All of this was indeed caused by Tang Zhou. After he was swallowed into the fire Qilin's stomach, he did not die. On the contrary, the fire Qilin's stomach was like a paradise to him instead of a pit of fire. The fire Qilin was born by devouring the yang qi essence in the magma. Its stomach was like another mass of magma, and it was no less powerful than the magma in the Earth's core. If anyone else had entered its stomach, they would have been refined long ago, leaving nothing behind. But Tang Zheng was different. Not only did he practice the indestructible body, but he also needed all of this now. The fire Qilin's stomach just happened to give him the best environment, and this was what he had been searching for. Then, he quickly adjusted his state and absorbed the yang qi essence of the fire Qilin. Although Tang Zheng still couldn't move, this was a subconscious action. He didn't need to control it at all. It was natural, and success came naturally. The fire Qilin had too much yang qi essence. In addition, all of its energy was focused on Tian Chanzi and the others, so it didn't notice that Tang Zheng had absorbed a little yang qi essence. But by the time it discovered something, it was already too late. Not only was the yang qi in its body attracted, but even the yang qi essence in the magma in the Earth's core was also attracted. It turned into streaks of red light, passing through its body and being absorbed into Tang Zheng's body. In a short period of time, Tang Zheng had absorbed too much, and the effect was very obvious. It proved that his judgment was right, and the method was feasible. Yin and Yang countered each other. An extreme Yang gave birth to Yin. A little bit of pure Yin energy actually appeared in his body, like a clear spring. The pure Yin energy was like spring water, flowing little by little into his 8 extraordinary meridians. His mobility was recovering bit by bit, and a black hole appeared in his palm. Sky swallowing technique. He used the absorption technique of the sky swallowing technique and quickly absorbed the yang qi essence of the fire Qilin, faster than before. The fire Qilin suffered a series of painful attacks and was almost half dead. It had no way to resist Tang Zheng and could only watch him do whatever he wanted. It was like a fish on the chopping board, at Tang Zheng's disposal. Tang Zheng needed too much yang qi essence, so he did not dare to hold back in the slightest, nor did he dare to show mercy. If he gave the fire Qilin the slightest chance, it would definitely counterattack and kill him unprepared. At that time, his advantage would be gone, and he would fall into a desperate situation. He absolutely could not do that. In the fierce battle just now, he clearly saw the danger that everyone was facing. How could he take such a risk? Although the fire Qilin was a divine beast, it possessed great strength. If it could be subdued and used, it would definitely be a great help. However, he didn't dare to take the risk and try to subdue the fire Qilin. The only way was to continuously absorb its power and supply it to himself. One of his hands was already able to move freely, and the hidden profound sword was tightly gripped in his palm. The hidden profound sword was connected to its master, and in an instant, it received a boost. Its power increased explosively, and the sword light was as bright as the stars. Whoosh, whoosh. Streaks of sword light spiraled in all directions, cutting the internal organs of the fire Qilin. Roar! The fire Qilin roared in pain, but to no avail. The sword light pierced through the cracks in its body, and immediately, its entire body was enveloped by the sword light. Seeing this scene, everyone's spirit was shaken. How could they not understand what was going on? Tang Zheng, it's really him. Yes, it's him. Too powerful. I knew he wouldn't abandon us. Nothing will happen to him. Some people were so excited that they were incoherent, and some were crying tears of joy. Coming back from death's door, everyone was like riding a roller coaster, flying from the abyss to the sky and back to the clouds. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and their expressions relaxed. Since Tang Zheng had made a desperate counterattack, the scales of victory must have been tilted. Moreover, everyone was not stupid. From the scene in front of them, they could already determine who had the upper hand. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng had the upper hand. Every dog has its day. The fire Qilin was completely at a disadvantage and had fallen into a passive situation. Boom! With a loud sound, an explosion sounded from the fire Qilin's body. Then, the fire Qilin's entire body exploded and fell into a ball of fire. The raging fire spread in all directions, and wherever it passed, the rocks immediately melted into magma. Its power was enormous. Retreat! Tian Chanzi roared and protected everyone as they hurriedly retreated into the cave, but the cave was also rapidly melting. Chapter 1645. The cave melted and turned into a water curtain cave. The magma dripped down and turned into a bead curtain. But through this bead curtain, one could vaguely see a shocking scene. The fire Chelan was completely enveloped in flames, and its body could no longer be seen. The flames seemed to have penetrated the core of the earth. The raging flames seemed to burn endlessly. After an unknown amount of time, which seemed to be as long as a century, there was movement in the flames. Everyone instantly widened their eyes and stared straight at the flames. A figure walked out from the flames. Everyone's hearts tightened. Could it be that the fire Chelan had walked out again? Wouldn't that be a waste of effort? Finally, the figure became clearer and clearer. Everyone could finally see it clearly. They were beaming with joy and couldn't help but exclaim loudly, "Tang Zheng!" Yes, the figure that walked out was actually Tang Zheng. He walked out with a majestic gait and was in high spirits. He was no longer a wooden figure that couldn't move. Everyone ignored the power of the flames and rushed forward, shouting, "Tang Zheng, you really succeeded. Are you all right?" At first, everyone didn't know if this method would work or not. It was only because Tang Zheng insisted on doing it that they agreed to fulfill his wish. Now it seemed that he was right. Extreme Yang gave birth to Yin. This method could really succeed. Looking at the people who didn't care about their own safety and rushed towards him, a faint smile appeared on Tang Zheng's face. With a wave of his hand, the flames behind him were instantly extinguished. The magma in the core of the earth also calmed down and returned to its original tranquility. There was only a gurgling sound of bubbles. He took large strides to welcome everyone. The women didn't care about their shyness and rushed into his arms. Immediately, his large arms were stuffed. Everyone squeezed into his arms and didn't care about their shyness. Smelling the familiar scent on his body, they felt especially at ease. Tang Zheng hugged the women tightly in his arms. Even Linger was no exception. Linger stole a glance at him and sweetly leaned on his shoulder. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes. This was simple and direct dog abuse. This brat had just walked out of the gates of hell, and so many people were already throwing themselves at him. He was the envy of others. Tang Zheng was also very moved. If it wasn't for his confidant who helped him without fear of danger, he was afraid that everything might not have gone so smoothly. Whether or not he could survive the crisis was also unknown. Moreover, he hadn't truly survived the crisis yet. After a long time, the women finally calmed down and reluctantly left his embrace. They glanced left and right, and everyone's eyes were filled with shyness. In any case, everyone had done the same thing, so they weren't that shy anymore. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi and turned his head away. He coughed and said, "You can turn around now." Tian Chanzi resentfully turned his head and fiercely glared at him. "You brat, you just can't stop. It's the new year, and you're causing so much trouble." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "I don't want to." "Then how are you now? Are you okay?" Tian Chanzi asked with concern. Tang Zheng's face sank. Everyone's heart trembled as they looked at him nervously. Could there be another problem? Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. This time, it was indeed the pure yang energy that caused trouble. Moreover, it was constantly accumulating. If everyone didn't treat me in time, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to keep my life. As for now, I can only temporarily control the pure yang energy because the Earth's core and the fire Chelan's body contain enough yang qi. Extreme yang produces yin, so I can barely suppress the pure yang energy. However, it will definitely erupt in the future. At that time, there will be a huge crisis. These words were understated, but it was like thunder in everyone's ears. They originally thought that everything was fine, but they didn't expect there to be so many repercussions. Then what should we do? The women asked anxiously. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, there will definitely be a way to completely solve this problem." The women looked at each other and thought of one person at the same time. That was the Empyrean fairy. Perhaps only her nine saint body could completely solve this problem. However, everyone tacitly didn't mention it. Tang Jing naturally knew about this method, but it wasn't as simple as eating and drinking. It was a matter of mutual consent and couldn't be forced. He wouldn't sacrifice others for his own survival, especially those close to him. What about the fire Qilin? Tian Chanzi asked curiously. Tang Zheng said disappointedly, if it wasn't for the urgent situation, the fire Qilin is so powerful. It would be great to take it for my own use, but I don't dare to take this risk. Moreover, to truly achieve extreme yang, producing yin, and restore my mobility, I can only completely absorb the yang qi essence in its body. This is faster and more convenient than absorbing it from the magma in the Earth's core. Without the yang qi essence, the fire Qilin will naturally cease to exist. Everyone suddenly realized. Tian Chanzi sighed. I didn't expect that the legendary divine beast really exists, and it's in the Earth's core. I'm afraid very few people would think of this. Li Xiaodian had an idea and said, since the fire Qilin lives in the Earth's core, then what about other worlds? Are there fire Qilins in the Earth's core? As soon as these words were said, everyone's eyes lit up. The fire Qilin was powerful. If they could take it under their command, it would definitely be a new force. Originally, they didn't have any hope, but they didn't expect Li Xiaoyan's words to wake them up. There were so many great worlds, and if other worlds also had Earth's cores, then wouldn't there also be fire Qilins? If they wanted a fire Qilin, then they could just go to the Earth's core in other worlds. Of course, this was just an idea. It wouldn't be easy to really achieve this. Everyone couldn't wait to leave this place and return to report the good news. However, Tang Zheng's gaze fell on Ling Er's hand. She was still tightly holding the tree of life's main root. He sighed thoughtfully. This is the tree of life's main root. It's really extraordinary. It can actually restrain the fire Qilin. As he spoke, he grabbed the main root. However, a strong rebound force hit his hand with a bang, causing him to withdraw his hand in pain. Seeing this, Ling Er hurriedly let go of the main root and asked with concern, Master, I'm sorry. Did I hurt you? Tang Zheng smiled and shook his head. It's fine. Ling Er, you're really amazing. You're the only one who can freely control this main root, and its power is extraordinary. Ling Er breathed a sigh of relief and said shyly, I was just lucky. No, this is your unique talent, which is more powerful than ours. If you have the main root of the tree of life as a magical treasure, then your fighting strength will naturally increase rapidly. Tang Zheng said in a deep voice, his eyes shining as he stared at the main root of the tree of life. The main root had fallen back into the magma and was safe and sound in the rolling magma. Ling Er shook her head. This is the tree of life's main root. How can I have the fortune to have it as a magic treasure? That's not necessarily true. Tang Zheng's gaze turned cold as he said meaningfully, I wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. All the lovers in the world will get married. Follow my WeChat account, Tang Xiao. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1646. That might not be the case. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Could it be that he had a method, or rather, a method to forcefully cut off a section of the tree of life's main root? Tian Chanzi earnestly reminded Tang Zheng, the tree of life is related to the entire world. Once the main root is damaged, what if the tree of life is also damaged? Ling reluctantly looked at the main root after hearing this and hurriedly nodded in agreement. Senior is right. The tree of life is the most important. Master, I can use other magic treasures. Tang Zheng looked deeply at Ling and said, You are fated with the tree of life. This is your destiny. After pausing for a moment, he stared at the main root and said, Tree of life, I know you're listening to me. Since Ling is fated with you, why don't you give her a section of the main root? This shouldn't be a big deal, right? Hearing his words, everyone's expression trembled. They stared straight at the main root, as if waiting for some kind of reaction. However, There was no reaction. Everyone's heart suddenly sank. Ling Er's face flashed with disappointment, but she looked gratefully at Tang Zheng and said, "Master, let's go." Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. It seemed that his thinking was too simple. He wouldn't really touch the Tree of Life. Just as Tian Chanzi said, a slight move in one part could affect the situation, as the Tree of Life was too important to this world. Everyone walked to the entrance of the cave and prepared to go back the way they came. Suddenly, there was movement behind them. A wave of magma rose up like a huge wave. Everyone was shocked and stopped in their tracks. They saw the main root flickering in the huge wave and flying towards them. They were shocked. Could it be that the main root wanted to attack them? Could it be that Tang Zheng's words angered the Tree of Life? Shua! A dazzling red light flickered on the main root. The following scene made everyone's eyes pop out. Everyone was dumbstruck and kept asking themselves, "What did I just see? Is this all real?" Of course, all of this was real. The main root of the Tree of Life actually broke off on its own. A section of the main root flew towards Ling. Linger covered her pink lips with both hands. She was so shocked that she couldn't say anything. The look in her eyes was also extremely complicated. The main root flew in front of her. She subconsciously reached out her hand, and the main root landed firmly in her palm. She stared blankly at the main root in her hand. For a moment, there were thousands of words stuck in her chest, but she couldn't say a single word. She abruptly raised her head and stared at the broken main root. She said excitedly, "Thank you, Tree of Life." The main root of the Tree of Life shook as if to say, "You're welcome." Then, with a flash of light, the broken part started to grow again. Not long after, the main root regained its original appearance, and a new section grew out. Tang Zheng also looked at this scene with surprise. He didn't expect the Tree of Life to be so generous as to give Ling a main root. Although the main root was very precious, only Linger could use it. Linger hugged the main root tightly in her arms. Looking at the main root that had grown back completely, she heaved a sigh of relief. Tang Zheng patted her head, looked at the main root in her hand, and said, "This is only a semi-finished product. If it is refined, it will definitely be able to unleash even more power and become a true sacred artifact." Linger said regretfully, "But I don't know how to refine artifacts." Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "Silly girl, I know how to." Linger blushed and said weakly, "I was too excited, I didn't think of it. Since your wish has been fulfilled, let's go up." Tang Zheng looked deeply at the main root. Linger waved her hand at the main root and flew out of the cave with the others. So everyone soared into the sky and flew out of the cave. All of the Witch Clan warriors surrounded them and looked at them anxiously. When they saw the lively Tang Zheng, they all heaved a sigh of relief and revealed an expression of ecstasy. Tang Zheng looked at them emotionally and said, "Thank you for your hard work." The Witch Clan warriors shook their heads and excitedly said that it wasn't hard at all. Just now, the mountains shook and the earth shook. We were worried to death. We thought something unexpected had happened. Yi Yuan said with lingering fear. "The mountains are shaking and the earth is shaking?" Everyone was surprised. "Didn't you guys feel it?" Yi Yuan asked curiously. The other Witch Clan warriors were also curious. Tang Zheng muttered to himself for a while, then said, "I understand. It must have been that great battle. After all, it was in the center of the earth, and it must have caused such a huge commotion. Since it was the core of the earth, then it would definitely not only affect this place, but it could also cause the entire world to tremble." He quickly spoke out his guess. Everyone was shocked at first, but they immediately felt that it made sense. After the Witch Clan warriors heard this, their faces were filled with shock. The movements of the Earth's core could affect the entire world. Wouldn't that mean that the entire world was shaking? This was simply unheard of. Tang Zheng stared at the big hole beside the tree trunk. With a point of his finger, a surge of energy shot out, and the surrounding soil quickly poured into the hole. Not long later, it was completely blocked. The Tree of Life is too important to this world. We were too careless in the past. Other than the formation protecting it, We should also send people to protect it and guard it to the death. We absolutely cannot make any mistakes, Tang Zheng said solemnly. The importance of the Tree of Life had once again increased by a level in his heart. Yi Yuan volunteered. Leave this mission to me. I will definitely protect the Tree of Life. As long as I still have a breath of life left, I will definitely not let the enemy get close to it. Tang Zheng patted Yi Yuan's shoulder, shook his head, and said earnestly, You still have other more important missions. Choose a few which clan warriors to stay here and protect the Tree of Life. All right, Yi Yuan angrily agreed, but he could not hold back his curiosity and asked, Then what is my mission? Tang Zheng said meaningfully, Sky beyond heaven. That is your battlefield. Sky beyond heaven? Yi Yuan was shocked. Tang Zheng had already made his decision. He promised Xiao by that he would return to the sky beyond heaven. And since the spring festival had passed, he would have to keep his promise and return to the sky beyond heaven. However, this time, it would definitely not be any easier than last time. He wanted to take revenge for Xiao Bai, so he would definitely have to go all out. A fierce battle was unavoidable. When the others heard this, they all looked at him in shock, but they gradually understood what he meant. All of them had different expressions. Some were excited, some were eager to try, and some were worried. Everyone returned and soared into the air. Everywhere they passed, the streets and alleys were filled with people. The mountains shook and the earth shook like an earthquake, causing the entire world to boil. Although there was no earthquake detected, nor was it that powerful, the ripples were so wide that it caught people off guard and made them even more unable to figure it out. Chapter 1647. The huge commotion around the world had alarmed the governments of various countries. The officials were the first to think of Tang Zheng, and he was the only one who could explain all of this. However, they were unable to break through the defensive array formation outside the villa, let alone force their way in. They could only wait here. Of course, they did not know that Tang Zheng was not in the villa, nor did they know about his situation. Therefore, when Tang Zheng and the others landed at this time, they quickly surrounded them. Young Master Tang, please wait. They hurriedly shouted, but their attitude was extremely respectful. Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks and frowned slightly. He had guessed the reason for their visit, but he was not in a hurry to explain. He asked in a deep voice, What's the matter? The officials had also gradually gotten used to Tang Zheng's style and did not beat around the bush. They went straight to the point and said, Young Master Tang, this time, the entire world is in an uproar. I wonder if young Master Tang knows the reason? We also know what reason to use to appease the people. Tang Zheng said that he had indeed come for this matter, but he was not prepared to tell the other party the truth. He said indifferently, This kind of thing will not happen again. As for how to appease the people, that is your specialty. There is no need for me to come up with a plan. With that, he turned around and walked back into the villa. Sigh, young Master Tang. How could the officials be satisfied with this answer? They quickly chased after him. Halt! Yi Yuan stood in front of the other party and stared at them with a stern expression. He was like a mountain, causing them to have no choice but to stop in their tracks. Tang Zheng entered the villa without even looking back. The officials stretched their necks and looked at his back, but there was nothing they could do. In the end, they could only return resentfully. As for the reason for all of this earth-shattering commotion, they could only guess. As for the excuse to appease the people, it was easy for them to do so there was no need to worry too much. Tang Zheng's return caused the entire villa to be filled with vitality again. The originally lifeless scene was completely brand new. Tang Dahai, Mu Hongyan, and Nana stayed at home, and every second felt like a year. Now that they saw that he was safe and sound, they all heaved a sigh of relief. The family was happy and harmonious, and the atmosphere of the new year seemed to have returned. Moreover, the estrangement between the women seemed to have dissolved a lot because of this, like snow melting away. Furthermore, everyone deliberately created an opportunity for Tang Zheng and Ling Er to be alone. The two of them definitely had a lot to talk about. Everyone was happily sitting on the sofa and watching the rerun of the Spring Festival Gala. Linger's performance on the Spring Festival Gala in particular was remarkable and very attractive. Tang Zheng had sharp ears and sharp eyes. He could vaguely hear the praises for Linger outside the door. Looking at the uneasy Linger, he smiled and said, "Linger, they are all praising you. Did you hear that?" Linger shyly lowered her head and said, "I'm not as powerful as they say. The eyes of the masses are as clear as snow. Your efforts and achievements are obvious to everyone," Tang Zheng said as he lifted the hair by her ear. Linger slowly raised her head and innocently said, "Master, do you really think that Linger is outstanding?" Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "Of course you are outstanding. Is there anything to doubt about that?" Linger was unable to contain her joy and asked in surprise, "Really?" Her pair of sparkling eyes were filled with joy and anticipation. Although she had received the recognition of the world, it couldn't be compared to Tang Zheng alone. As long as Tang Zheng alone acknowledged her, then everything she had done would be worth it. Tang Zheng stared into her eyes with a burning gaze and nodded his head heavily. He firmly said, "Really?" Linger's face was like a flower in full bloom. In an instant, the room became as warm as spring. Linger was like a dancing butterfly as she flew into Tang Zheng's embrace. With a soft jade in his arms, a fragrant scent assailed his nostrils. Tang Zheng's head swayed as he subconsciously hugged her waist. Her waist was very thin and soft. Perhaps it was because she often practiced dancing, but her elasticity was astonishing. Linger's entire body tensed up. Previously, when she was in close contact with Tang Zheng, it was when Tang Zheng was unconscious and did not have the ability to move. Now that she was tightly held in his embrace, the young girl's heart began to pound. Tang Zheng gently stroked her hair and gently said, "Linger, I will definitely treat you well in the future." Linger foolishly raised her head and looked at him with little stars in her eyes. She said, "Master, I am willing to do all of this. Linger is able to save Master. Linger is more than happy. But you have sacrificed too much," Tang Zheng sincerely said. Linger shook her head. "Not much. Everything I have belongs to Master." Tang Zheng was deeply moved. His arms tightened around her as if he wanted to squeeze her into his embrace. "Master, there's someone outside." Linger was moved, but she also shyly whispered. Tang Zheng released his hands and lowered his head. He lightly pecked her lips. Linger's face instantly turned red to the roots of her neck. Seeing her like this, Tang Zheng's head shook slightly. However, he still calmed down and said, "Linger, take out the main root. I will refine a magic weapon for you." This was something that had to be done before going to Sky Beyond Heaven. Why not take this opportunity to do it? When Linger heard this, she was overjoyed. She quickly suppressed the shyness in her heart and quickly took out the main root. She held it with both hands and said, "Master, this fast?" Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the 9 revolving pill furnace flew out and hovered in front of the two of them. "Master, for you." Linger wanted to pass the main root to him. Tang Zheng refused. He pointed at the 9 revolving pill furnace and said, "Put the main root into the furnace." Only Linger could touch the main root. Linger suddenly realized this. She playfully stuck out her tongue. She held the main root with both hands and carefully placed it into the 9 revolving pill furnace. "You watch from the side. I will refine a magic weapon for you." Linger excitedly nodded her head. Her eyes were wide open as she stared at him and the furnace. She was full of expectations. Tang Zheng extended his finger and pointed at the furnace. A ball of heavenly fire flew from his finger into the furnace. With a boom, the furnace was completely lit up by the flames. A ball of green light flew out from the furnace. In an instant, the pictures of birds and beasts on the walls of the furnace moved as if they were alive. They quickly moved around the walls of the furnace. That ball of green light was immediately bound by an invisible force. It was unable to escape from the 9 revolving pill furnace. This ball of green light became brighter and brighter. It was as if it wanted to escape from the furnace. However, in the end, it was unable to do so. If one looked into the furnace, they would be shocked to see that the main root had changed. It was already completely surrounded by heavenly fire. It was burning fiercely. Little green lights flew out from the main root like fireflies. This was the purest energy refined from the main root. The heavenly fire's power was extraordinary. Even the tree of life's main root, which was safe and sound in the lava, was being refined little by little. From this, one could see the power of the heavenly fire. Of course, this was also because the main root had already been separated from the tree of life. Without the support of the tree of life, its resistance was greatly reduced, which was why it was so easy to be refined by the heavenly fire. Linger's eyes widened. This was the first time she had witnessed someone refine a magic weapon. Moreover, it was a magic weapon that was refined for her. Everything was full of novelty. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1648. The main root was not completely melted, but the impurities were completely removed. The essence flew up like a firefly, spiraling around the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. Refining wasn't just a single material, so Tang Zheng wasn't stingy. With a single thought, the most important materials in Sumer world flew into the alchemy furnace. In an instant, the aura inside the alchemy furnace turned into several streams, growing more and more as they surged like a flood. These materials weren't as durable as the main root, and soon they were completely transformed into pure energy. At this time, the main root's impurities were completely refined, becoming as soft as mercury. It was placed horizontally in the middle of the alchemy furnace, emitting a strange light. Tang Zheng formed a seal with his hands, and with a few whooshing sounds, he sent several seals into the alchemy furnace. In an instant, the seals merged with the main root, and it was as if the main root had a suction force, absorbing the pure energy spiraling around the alchemy furnace. Hua! A brilliant light burst out from the main root, as if it was alive, gently floating up. The relief carvings on the walls of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace became more and more vivid, directly flying out from the walls and into the alchemy furnace. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he couldn't help but recall the scene when he was refining the hidden profound sword. The hidden profound sword had the ability to absorb souls, and the souls on the alchemy furnace were almost completely absorbed by the hidden profound sword. Could it be that the main root also had this ability? His heart trembled, and he became cautious. He didn't want his 9 revolving alchemy furnaces' soul to be sucked away, as that would cause the furnace's grade to drop. Now that the furnace's spirit had not been found, if the spirit was sucked away, then how could the 9 revolving alchemy furnace be called a saint tool? There was no way to avoid it being downgraded. He didn't want to see this scene. The spirits of the relief sculptures danced around the main root, exuding a soul-stirring demonic power. Suddenly, the spirits let out sharp shrieks and flew towards the main root. Tang Zheng shivered and inwardly shouted, "Don't!" However, these spirits were not under his control, and with a whooshing sound, they flew to the front of the main root. The main root immediately lit up with a dazzling green light, enveloping these spirits. Immediately, the spirits stopped their shrieks, and like a spring breeze, they miraculously calmed down. Tang Zheng looked at this scene in disbelief, not understanding what was going on. Linger didn't know the situation inside the furnace, and blankly looked at Tang Zheng. From his eyebrows, as if something had happened. Her heart involuntarily hung up as she really wanted to ask what was going on, but in the end she gave up as she did not dare to disturb Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng frowned as he solemnly stared at the inside of the pill furnace. The spirit and the green light had all calmed down, and each of them emitted a different kind of light. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he stared closely at one of the spirit essences. This spirit essence was especially eye-catching because it emitted the most intense and dazzling light. Originally, The difference between the spirits wasn't big, but once they were enveloped by the green light, the difference was very obvious. Tang Zheng's eyes gradually lit up because he realized that there are differences between the spirits, and the strength of the green light represented the strength of the spirit. Among all the spirits, whose spirit was the most powerful? Without a doubt, it was the 9 revolving pill furnaces tool spirit, which was the most powerful existence among all the spirits. Tang Zheng had always been trying to figure out which spirit was the tool spirit, but he had never found any clues, and unexpectedly, the green light of the main root helped him figure it out. He couldn't contain his joy and firmly stared at the spirit. Its body was a mass of chaos, and it didn't have a clear appearance. There were other similar spirits, so it wasn't strange at all, and Tang Zheng hadn't noticed it before. He never thought that the 9 revolving pill furnaces tool spirit would be this mass of chaos. He couldn't wait to grab it. In the end, he suppressed the impulse in his heart and only firmly locked onto it with his divine sense. Even if the green light disappeared, it wouldn't be able to escape. Of course, Tang Zheng also finally understood that the Tree of Life's green light wasn't absorbing the spirits, because these spirits weren't sucked away, and it seemed to be a natural reaction. The spirits gradually rose, and little by little flew to the mouth of the pill furnace, and then broke free from the green light's binding, and flew back to the pill furnace's wall. But Tang Zheng keenly discovered that the spirits on the pill furnace's wall were more active and more spiritual. This was an unprecedented change and made him shocked. Could this be the effect of the green light? He guessed correctly. The Tree of Life was equivalent to the mother of all creation and could improve the environment and spiritual energy between heaven and earth. The green light it emitted had a very strong spiritual nature and could even awaken the spiritual nature of other species. These spirits were shrouded in the green light, and their spiritual nature greatly increased. So when they returned to the pill furnace, the spiritual nature of the spirits increased, and it could be seen with the naked eye. Tang Zheng looked pensive and gradually understood the secret. Suddenly, the way he looked at the main root changed. Originally, he only wanted to refine it into an offensive magic weapon, but now it seemed that his vision was too short. This magic weapon had potential and power that he didn't expect. He couldn't help but look forward to it. After refining the main root, what kind of power would it have? The green light of the main root gradually calmed down and completely shrunk, converging on the main root. Every time it shrunk a little, the green of the main root became more obvious. When the green light had completely shrunk into the main root had become a lush green and was full of vitality. A strong spiritual energy was emitted from the main root and filled the 9 revolving pill furnace. Even in the outside world, this spiritual energy could be clearly felt. Ling was stunned and looked at the 9 revolving pill furnace with pleasant surprise. She had already seen through the clues and couldn't help but reveal a look of longing and anticipation. Tang Zheng understood that the time had come, and with a shout, he raised his hands, and the pill furnace began to rotate faster and faster. In an instant, the pill furnace was only left with a ball of light, and there was no way to distinguish the actual appearance of the pill furnace. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed, and with his hands forming a seal, he quickly sent a few hand seals into the pill furnace, and the pill furnace came to an abrupt stop, as if it had hit the brakes, and immediately stopped rotating. Success! Tang Zheng beamed with exultation, raised his hands high, and shouted, "Come out of the furnace!" A green light slowly rose from the pill furnace. In an instant, the green light filled the entire room. A burst of spirit chi gushed out like a spring, filling the entire room in an instant. 2 pairs of eyes coincidentally looked at the mouth of the pill furnace, full of expectation. The main root gradually revealed its true appearance, but compared to its original appearance, it had already undergone earth-shattering changes. To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1649. The main root was verdant and about 3 meters long. It was curled into a ball and had 3 sane inscriptions running through it. It was particularly eye-catching. Tang Zheng saw the 3 sane inscriptions at a glance and could not help but cry out in surprise. It was exactly the same as when the hidden profound sword was refined. It also had 3 extremely simple sane inscriptions. The main root was indeed an excellent material for refining magic treasures. It had actually refined a saint artifact with 3 saint inscriptions in one go. Linger also noticed this, and she couldn't help but cover her mouth. Her eyes were full of surprise and joy. Tang Zheng could feel the surging power of the main root. This power was very different from ordinary magic treasures. Not only was it offensive, but it also had other attributes. The green light on the surface of the main root was filled with this attribute. He immediately recalled the changes in the spirit essences. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that its other attribute was this? It could awaken or increase the spirituality of the spirits. Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the main root flew to him. The main root shook its head and wagged its tail. It was very intelligent because it was a saint artifact. It had a tool spirit and naturally had its own consciousness. Tang Zheng grabbed the main root. The main root had already been refined, so he did not have to worry about the previous rebound. He easily grabbed it. However, the main root did not have much intimacy with Tang Zheng. Instead, it extended to Ling and gently touched the back of her hand. It seemed to be very close to her, as if she had refined it. Ling widened her eyes in surprise. She extended the back of her hand and allowed it to touch her. It was as if their hearts were connected. Tang Zheng looked at this harmonious scene and could not help but laugh. The main root was refined by his hands, but it did not have much intimacy with him. Instead, it was very close to Linger. He was not jealous of Linger. His eyes shone as he pondered. He quickly figured out the reason. The tree of life was equivalent to the Mother Earth. Linger's original form was 100-year-old ginseng, which was also a plant. It had a mysterious commonality with the tree of life, which led to a natural closeness between the two. Moreover, Linger had previously established a mysterious connection with the main root. Even after a period of careful refinement and the main root had turned into a magic treasure, the mysterious connection between the two did not weaken. Instead, it strengthened. Linger was so happy that she was like a little girl, almost dancing with joy. She looked at Tang Zheng and said excitedly, "Master, look at how interesting it is." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You're the only one who's close to it. The others don't have this kind of luck." Linger stuck out her tongue playfully. "Linger, since it's already a magic treasure, it must have a name. It's your magic treasure, so you should give it a name," Tang Zheng said. Linger hesitated and said, "I don't have much knowledge. How would I know how to give it a name?" "Master, you can give it a name." Tang Zheng shook his head and said, "It will definitely want you to give a name. Don't decline." Linger stared at the main root. After thinking for a while, she reluctantly said, "All right then. If I don't give it a good name, Master won't laugh at me." Tang Zheng smiled faintly and encouraged her with his eyes. Linger thought for a while. Her eyes shone and she said, "Got it. Since it's my magic treasure, then let's call it Heavenly Spirit Whip." "Master, what do you think?" "Heavenly Spirit Whip." Tang Zheng softly repeated it a few times. After thinking for a while, his eyes gradually lit up. He looked at Linger with a smile and praised, "Not bad. Linger, you're still so humble. Your naming skills are top-notch." Linger shyly lowered her head and said, "Master, you're overpraising me. I'm not as strong as you say." The Heavenly Spirit Whip also knew that it had a name. It happily touched Linger's hand as if it was thanking her for giving a name. Linger's hand was itchy. She couldn't stop giggling. Her smile was as bright as the spring sun. "The name bestowment is complete. Now let's drip blood on it to recognize you as its master," Tang Zheng said again. Linger nodded her head. Her expression became serious. She knew that this was the most important step. It was the most important step for the Heavenly Spirit Whip to truly become her magic treasure. She stretched out her finger and activated her chi. A drop of blood gathered at her fingertip. Drip! The drop of blood landed on the heavenly spirit whip. A small flower of blood appeared. However, the drop of blood did not fall. It was immediately absorbed by the heavenly spirit whip. A red line began to move around the heavenly spirit whip. Wherever it passed, a red line appeared on the heavenly spirit whip. It was just like a human's blood vessels. Boom! A green light surged out from the heavenly spirit whip and spread in all directions. Ripples appeared in the air one after another. Tang Zheng looked at this scene in surprise. The movement caused by the drop of blood, recognizing its master, was too big. It was far beyond his expectations. It was precisely this huge movement that showed how extraordinary the heavenly spirit whip was. He opened his eyes wide, unwilling to miss a single detail. The movement caused by the drop of blood, recognizing its master, was far more than that. The green light on the heavenly spirit whip became brighter and brighter. In the end, it transformed into pieces of green leaves. Soon, the heavenly spirit whip was covered in green leaves. It was like a vine covered in green leaves. The green leaves looked green and harmless. However, Tang Zheng's pupil shrank. He could see the danger from the green leaves. If I were to be swept by the green leaves, I'm afraid the taste won't be good at all. Tang Zheng pondered. The heavenly spirit whip seemed to come alive. A powerful force shot out and broke free from Tang Zheng's large hand. It automatically flew into Ling Er's hand. Immediately, Ling Er was also enveloped in the green light. Her eyes revealed a trace of doubt, but in an instant, it burst out with a pleasantly surprised expression. Then, she closed her eyes like an old monk in meditation. This, the heavenly spirit whip, is actually returning the favor to Ling Er. It seems that she has benefited greatly. I'm afraid her cultivation will improve. Tang Zheng muttered to himself. The heavenly spirit whip was indeed returning the favor to Ling Er. Its green light could increase the soul's spirituality. Naturally, it could also increase Ling Er's spirituality. As Ling Er's spirituality increased, her cultivation naturally increased by leaps and bounds. Her true qi also soared. Ling Er's complexion was like water. She quietly closed her eyes and quietly felt the changes in her body. Under the green light, her mood was particularly tranquil. She was neither sad nor happy. She forgot about everything. Time passed by minute. Finally, Ling Er opened her eyes. Her eyes were bright and clear. Her eyes were like the purest water in the world. Ling originally had a pure heart. Later, after experiencing the world of mortals, she was affected to a certain extent. Her heart was not so pure. However, when she received the return favor from the heavenly spirit whip, the trace of filth in her heart was cleansed without leaving a trace. She was restored to an unprecedented purity. Just by looking at her eyes, it seemed to be able to purify one's soul and wash away the darkness in one's heart. Tang Zheng looked at her eyes. A loud sound rang out in his heart. Then, his heart suddenly became free of distracting thoughts. Ksitigarbha's voice rang in his ears. A mysterious and profound Buddhist nourishment silently penetrated into his body and mind. Originally, he recited many times, but did not completely understand the exquisite Buddhist Dharma. At this moment, he automatically understood it. Chapter 1650. The golden light enveloped Tang Zheng's entire body and gradually turned into a golden kasaya. Tang Zheng's eyes also emitted a golden light, solemn and dignified. Everyone, please search for the most complete novel. He couldn't help but recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Lines of Sanskrit flew out of his mouth and filled the large room. Ling Er opened her eyes, unable to contain her joy. This was because her cultivation had soared to the heavens. It was as if she had an epiphany. She broke through 2 levels in a row and reached the 3rd level of demigod realm. Ling didn't even have time to digest her joy when she saw the miraculous scene happening to Tang Zheng's body. She was immediately dumbstruck. Looking at the Sanskrit characters, she had a very peaceful feeling. It was exactly the same feeling she had when the heavenly spirit whip was feeding back to her. Tang Zheng slowly opened his eyes. The Sanskrit characters in the room flew into his body with a whoosh and disappeared without a trace. The golden kasaya on his body also disappeared. However, a golden bead condensed in the palm of his hand. It was as if it was a real object. He lowered his head and looked at the golden bead in his hand thoughtfully. He muttered to himself, "Buddhist bead, what an unexpected surprise." There was a Sanskrit character on the Buddhist bead. It seemed to be tightly attached to the Buddhist bead. After hearing his words, it suddenly lit up with a golden light. This golden light was the Buddhist light. Once it came into contact with the golden light, there was a feeling of calmness. Good stuff. Tang Zheng wanted to carefully study the use of this Buddhist bead. Dizong of Goguryeo didn't tell him that the Ksitigarbha Sutra could condense Buddhist beads. This was all his opportunity, and he needed to explore it himself. Of course, all of this was thanks to Ling Er. If it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have had an epiphany of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Naturally, he wouldn't have been able to condense Buddhist beads. He put the Buddhist beads into Sumeru world and looked up at Ling Er. He said, "Ling Er, thank you." Ling Er looked at him in confusion. She asked, "Master, why are you thanking me?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You've helped me a lot." Ling Er blinked, not fully understanding. "Master, what is that golden pearl?" Ling Er asked curiously. "Those are Buddhist prayer beads. They are extremely exquisite. I still need to study them carefully." Tang Zheng explained. His gaze shifted slightly and fell on Ling Er's heavenly spirit whip. The green leaves on the heavenly spirit whip had already disappeared, leaving only its bamboo-like body. Tang Zheng said meaningfully, "Ling Er, the heavenly spirit whip was refined from the main root of the tree of life, so it is quite different from ordinary magic treasures. You have to explore it more." Ling Er nodded heavily and revealed a happy expression. "Understand." "Thank you, Master, for refining such a good treasure for me." After saying that, the heavenly spirit whip also shook, as if it was connected to her mind, and also felt her joy. "Ling Er, you go out first. I still need to study the 9 revolving alchemy furnace." Ling Er nodded and said, "Master, you do what you need to do. I will go out first to tell them the good news." After saying that, she skipped out like a happy spirit. The room became quiet. Tang Zheng looked at the 9 revolving alchemy furnace in the middle of the room. With a wave of his hand, the 9 revolving alchemy furnace flew in front of him. The spirits were completely still and no longer emitted light. They were like reliefs engraved on the walls of the alchemy furnace. If one were to use the naked eye to identify the spirit of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace, they would not be able to tell which spirit was the 9 revolving alchemy furnace's spirit. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a smile as he said, "You can forget about hiding now. Come out, artifact spirit." Tang Zheng circulated his energy and a black hole appeared in the center of his palm. He aimed it at the spirit on the walls of the alchemy furnace. Wong. It was like poking a hornet's nest. The spirit on the walls of the furnace became restless, and rays of light burst out from the walls of the furnace. "You want to run? You won't be able to." Tang Zheng activated the swallowing heavens technique, targeting only the artifact spirit's soul. He firmly locked onto it and roared, "Come out." So, the spirit was unable to resist the swallowing heaven technique's power. It separated from the walls of the furnace and soared towards Tang Zheng, heading straight for the black hole in his palm. The spirit sensed danger and struggled nonstop. However, how could it be a match for the swallowing heaven technique? All of its struggles were futile. "Stop!" Tang Zheng shouted. The spirit stopped in his palm, and the black hole disappeared. The spirit emitted light and struggled in his palm, but it was unable to escape from his 5 fingers. Tang Zheng gently comforted it. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. You are the spirit of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. I'm only returning you to your rightful owner and truly merging with the furnace." So, with that, he flipped his palm and the spirit fell from his palm. However, it was unable to escape and was slapped into the furnace. Wong. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace had already been activated by Tang Zheng and released a ray of light that firmly bound the spirit, making it unable to escape. The spirit crashed left and right. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace seemed to have been hit by a powerful force and let out a series of banging sounds. "You're so restless. I'll tame you in a moment and make you obedient." Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. He quickly circulated his energy and resonated with the 9 revolving alchemy furnace, driving the spirit down bit by bit. Gradually, the spirit began to change. It was as if a person had stripped off their outer clothes and revealed their true appearance. The spirit was no longer a chaotic mass. Instead, it turned into the shape of an alchemy furnace. It was exactly the same as the 9 revolving alchemy furnace, but it was a miniature version. Tang Zheng found it interesting and could not help but laugh. "So this is your true appearance. You really hit it well." After a slight pause, he roared, "Fuse." As soon as his voice fell, the spirit fell to the bottom of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. With a flash of light, the spirit sank bit by bit into the furnace. Not long after, it completely disappeared and fused with the furnace. Wong. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace flew into the air and spun incessantly, releasing rays of light that illuminated the entire room. Tang Zheng put down his hands and removed his control over the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. Now that the fusion was complete, the rest was up to the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. The alchemy furnace spun too quickly, causing the airflow in the room to become chaotic. It created a whirlpool like a tornado. Tang Zheng slightly narrowed his eyes as he witnessed this magical scene. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace was truly unique. Even the spirit of the furnace was separated from a main body. He had to spend a lot of effort to make the 9 revolving alchemy furnace into a true Saint artifact. As the wind died down, the 9 revolving alchemy furnace gently floated to the ground. The rays of light on its body had almost completely disappeared. Tang Zheng reached out and grabbed the edge of the furnace. Boom! A clap of thunder sounded in his head, and then a voice appeared in his mind. "Master!" The spirit of the furnace respectfully called out. Tang Zheng smiled in satisfaction and sighed with deep meaning. "Hearing you call me master is not easy." The spirit of the furnace fearfully said, "Master, this is a necessary process." Because the 9 revolving alchemy furnace fused with too many spirits, the spirits interfered with each other, resulting in this situation. No need to explain, I'm not that narrow-minded. Now that you have become a true Saint artifact, it will be easier for you to refine magic weapons and pills. Tang Zheng waved his hand. Naturally, he would not lower himself to its level. Yes, as long as Master gives me the materials, I can automatically refine pills and magic weapons. Automatically refine. Tang Zheng's eyes widened. Chapter 1651. Once the 9 revolving pill furnace could automatically refine pills and magic treasures, there was no need for Tang Zheng to worry about it. He directly handed the raw materials to the 9 revolving pill furnace and only needed to wait for the finished product. He was completely freed and had time to do other things. Moreover, everyone was in urgent need of pills and magic treasures, and the 9 revolving pill furnace's attribute solved his urgent need. I will immediately send people to search for various materials and give you the corresponding pill formulas. First, help me refine a batch of pills. The people around me need these pills to increase their cultivation. Tang Zheng said impatiently. The weapon spirit said, "Master, there is something I haven't told you yet. I know many pill formulas, so you don't need to give me the pill formulas. As long as you need any pill, I will refine it for you." "There's such a good thing?" Tang Zheng was shocked and ecstatic. "Then in your pill formulas, which pill can increase my cultivation the fastest?" "This naturally belongs to the wall-breaking golden pill," the weapon spirit replied. Tang Zheng had never heard of this pill before and asked curiously, "What is so special about this pill?" "On the path of cultivation, you will encounter many obstacles. Each obstacle is like an obstacle in front of you. Only by breaking through these obstacles can you advance by leaps and bounds. The wall-breaking golden pill is a miraculous pill to break through the obstacles, allowing a person's cultivation to increase rapidly. The weapon spirit replied. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and said, "Then I will give you the materials. You can refine this wall-breaking golden pill for me. The more the better, the faster the better." "No problem." The weapon spirit was eager to give it a try. Tang Zheng left the room, and everyone's gaze immediately shifted from Ling'er to him, staring at him with burning eyes. Tang Zheng immediately ordered the Witch Clan elder to purchase the materials needed by the artifact spirit. The Witch Clan elder was proficient in medicine, and gradually heard some of the profoundness of it. He asked thoughtfully, "Are you going to refine pills?" "Yes, the weapon spirit of the 9 revolving pill furnace has been found. It can refine pills on its own, and this wall-breaking golden pill can quickly increase everyone's cultivation. These things are the raw materials for refining the wall-breaking golden pill." Tang Zheng patiently explained. Breakthrough golden core? Quickly improve his cultivation? Everyone was shocked and couldn't help but cry out in alarm. They had never heard of this kind of pill before. This was simply a heaven-defying existence. If it could increase one's cultivation so quickly, then what was the point of arduous cultivation? Cultivation didn't seem to be that difficult anymore. In other words, it was unattainable. In addition, there was also the inner demons. The elder of the sorcerer tribe immediately thought of the most important point and said worriedly, "Increasing your cultivation level quickly is naturally something that everyone is happy about. It is also something that everyone dreams of. However, the inner demons are an insurmountable barrier in cultivation. If you increase your cultivation level too quickly, the inner demons will also become an unprecedented obstacle. This will lead to Qigong deviation, and all your efforts will be in vain." The others had a look of deep understanding as they worriedly looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng looked around and saw that everyone's expression was similar. It seemed that their thoughts were similar. He mysteriously smiled and said, "So you are worried about the problem of the inner demons. But if I say that I have solved this problem, then do you have any objections about increasing your cultivation level quickly?" Everyone looked at each other. They couldn't figure out the deep meaning of his words. They especially didn't understand where he got the method to solve the problem of the inner demons. Seeing that everyone was silent, Tang Zheng asked, "Do you have any objections?" Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, "If you can solve the problem of the inner demons and increase your cultivation level quickly, then it is naturally something that everyone is happy to see. But the key point is that the inner demons are not something that can be solved just because you want to." The others nodded in agreement. Tang Zheng couldn't help but laugh and said, "Tian Chanzi, that's for others. Don't you know who I am? How can the inner demons be a problem for me?" Tian Chanzi had a flash of inspiration. He finally understood that Tang Zheng was not a boastful person. Since he had said it several times, then he must have full confidence in solving the problem of the inner demons. So he couldn't wait to ask, "Kid, you are keeping us in suspense. Hurry up and tell us how to solve the problem of the inner demons." Tang Zheng snapped his fingers. A ray of light burst out from his fingers. With a thought, he pointed to the ground. The exorcist mirror flew from the heaven realm to everyone. The exorcist mirror exuded a mysterious aura, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. Pairs of eyes stared at the exorcist mirror. "What is this?" "The exorcist mirror," Tang Zheng said resolutely. "It can completely exorcise everyone's inner demons. Everyone's worries won't be necessary. There won't be any side effects if you quickly increase your cultivation." "Can it really be like this?" Tian Chanzi couldn't help but rush to the exorcist mirror. He walked around it in a circle and clicked his tongue in wonder. Yi Dingdang had a lively personality. With a kick of her feet, she jumped in front of the exorcist mirror. Facing the exorcist mirror, she could clearly see her own appearance in the mirror. Buzz! Suddenly, the world around her disappeared. It was as if she had come to another strange world. This world was very novel. She opened her eyes wide in surprise. This was the world she had fantasized about many times. She had the heart of a chivalrous heroine. So, she had always fantasized about herself wielding a sword and wandering the world alone. But this was just a fantasy. In front of him was a river that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was like a silver ribbon that meandered across the land. Hua! A vigorous figure walked on the river and arrived in front of her. She focused her eyes and was instantly mesmerized. Who else could this person be but Tang Zheng? Tang Zheng was dressed like a chivalrous hero. He had a long sword at his waist. His white robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyebrows were like swords and his eyes like stars. Suddenly, a delicate scream rang out. Yidingdang's gaze turned. She saw a few bad guys surrounding a girl, intending to molest her. Yidingdang's sense of justice instantly exploded. With a delicate shout, she rushed forward and quickly dealt with the bad guys. She reached out and pulled the weak girl up. The girl raised her head. Her beauty was beyond compare. It was Feng Shishir. She was dressed like a lady from a noble family. Tang Zheng also flew forward, but he was immediately attracted by the lady from a noble family, Feng Shishir. He couldn't even bear to blink. When Yi Dingdang saw this, she flew into a rage. Her face flushed red and her breathing quickened. Her aura and cultivation showed signs of going berserk. Yi Dingdang had experienced so much because of the exorcist mirror. But in the eyes of others, she seemed to be in a daze, staring at the exorcist mirror without moving. There was one person who was different. That was Tang Zheng. He was the owner of the exorcist mirror. Everything that Yi Dingdang saw was clearly presented in his mind. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1652. Tang Zheng's head thumped. He had not expected this at all. He had not expected that becoming the owner of the exorcist mirror would have such an effect. But after seeing everything that Yi Dingdang had experienced and how it was related to him, his heart trembled and waves of emotions surged. Seeing that Yi Dingdang was about to completely fall into the illusion and lose her mind, Tang Zheng hurriedly activated the exorcist mirror. Although the exorcist mirror could expel a person's inner demons, it also had a drawback. If a person fell into the exorcist mirror's illusion and did not have enough luck or strength, they would not be able to walk out of the illusion. Only by walking out of the illusion unscathed would one be able to completely dispel one's inner demons. If one fell into the illusion, one would be consigned to eternal damnation. If Yi Dingdang relied on her own luck, it was still unknown whether she would be able to break through the illusion and truly expel the inner demons. Since Tang Zheng was the owner of the exorcist mirror, he could naturally make everything simple and did not need to take such a huge risk. Whether others could successfully expel their inner demons was all up to him. Thus, with a thought, the exorcist mirror flashed and a ray of light shot out from the mirror, landing on Yi Dingdang's head. Yi Dingdang was suddenly startled. Her originally restless Zhen Qi gradually calmed down and her eyes became clear. Her eyes were bright and full of spirit. In the illusion, Tang Zheng held her hand, causing her heart to beat like a little deer. She was extremely bashful. She slowly raised her head and looked at Tang Zheng in high spirits, only to find that Tang Zheng was looking at her tenderly. Her original anger vanished like smoke in thin air. Although Feng Shishir was still by her side, she did not stir up the anger in her heart. Tang Zheng's hands and eyes seemed to have a magical power that made her forget her jealousy, leaving only sweet happiness. Kacha! A crisp sound rang from the bottom of her heart. This was the sign of the inner demons shattering. She slowly closed her eyes, and only happiness remained in her heart. The illusion disappeared, and she walked out of it completely. The demon in her heart was gone. When she opened her eyes again, they were much clearer, and they were filled with more spirituality. Everyone looked at her in surprise. From her reaction just now, everyone could already see the clues. So when they saw her wake up, they were very curious. What did she experience, and what did she gain? Tian Chanzi was deep in thought. He looked into her eyes and asked, "Ding dang, did your inner demons disappear just like that?" He had already seen some clues, but he wasn't sure. He was skeptical. Yi Ding Dang was the one who knew her body the best. She beamed with joy and nodded. "It's true. My inner demons have been exorcised." She paused for a moment, as if digesting this great joy, and then said, "I don't have to worry about going berserk on the road to cultivation in the future." When the others heard this, they looked at her enviously. This was something that many people dreamed of. Even Tian Chanzi was envious. He couldn't wait to say, "Brat, hurry up and use the exorcist mirror to expel my inner demons." "Don't worry, everyone has a chance. I will expel each of your inner demons. Then, after the wall-breaking golden pill is refined, you can use the pill to quickly increase your cultivation. In the future, when you face powerful enemies, you will also have a stronger fighting strength." Tang Zheng comforted. Everyone suppressed the idea of competing with each other. Instead, they modestly declined and gave the opportunity to expel the inner demons to others first. "I will work hard now and expel all of your inner demons one by one." For the next few days, Tang Zheng continuously expelled the inner demons for others. Even the inner demons of the witch tribe warriors were completely expelled. Once the inner demons were gone, they couldn't wait to cultivate. All kinds of materials to refine the wall-breaking golden pill were also collected. They were all handed over to the 9 revolving pill furnace by Tang Zheng. Then, when he had expelled everyone's inner demons, it was time to open the furnace and take out the pill. Many people gathered in front of the 9 revolving pill furnace. Everyone had witnessed the miracle of the 9 revolving pill furnace refining pills by itself. They were all amazed and naturally wanted to witness the scene of the furnace opening and taking out the pill with their own eyes. Moreover, the wall-breaking golden pill was closely related to them. They couldn't wait to try it out. The 9 revolving pill furnace stopped spinning and slowly fell from the air to the ground. Boom! A loud sound came from the inside of the alchemy furnace as a mystical fragrance wafted out of the furnace and filled the entire room. It was refreshing and intoxicating. Then, a golden light slowly rose from the furnace. Then, a large amount of golden light flew out of the furnace. It was as if everyone was wearing a layer of golden clothing. Under the eyes of the crowd, the golden pills were like candied haws. They lined up in a row and were displayed in front of everyone. "Wow!" Sound of exclamations rose and fell. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at this scene. They sighed in their hearts. "This is the wall-breaking golden pill. Ah! It is really extraordinary. No wonder it has such a big effect. It's a success." Tang Zheng looked at this scene and said with a hammer of the hammer, "Oh, oh!" Cheers resounded through the sky. Everyone's eyes were shining. They couldn't wait to take the wall-breaking golden pill and test its effects. Porcelain bottles flew out from Summer World and appeared out of thin air. The wall-breaking golden pills automatically flew into the bottles, and soon there were many bottles. This is the result of the first refining. Next, we will continue to refine more. These wall-breaking golden pills will be distributed first, so everyone can work harder on their cultivation." Tang Zheng said in a clear voice. "Yes." Everyone responded in unison and fondled the porcelain bottle lovingly. Tang Zheng looked at the 9 revolving pill furnace and thought to himself that after fusing with the tool spirit, it really did have an extraordinary effect. Even though it could refine pills on its own, it did not need anyone to take care of it. Tang Zheng had too many things to do. He couldn't spare time, so this matter had to be handed over to someone else. His eyes swept over the crowd and shook his head. There is no suitable person among these people. Suddenly, he had an idea. A figure flashed in his mind, and the corner of his mouth rose. He secretly said, "There is no one more suitable than him." The next day, a travel-worn person rushed over from outside. He couldn't hold back his surprise and came at Tang Zheng. "Master, what instructions do you have for me?" The king of medicine was hale and hearty. He had white hair and a youthful complexion. He had a sage-like demeanor, and his temperament was more profound and mysterious than before. Since Tang Zheng's cultivation had become more profound, he had become accustomed to the king of medicine worshiping him as his master. He knew that this was an opportunity between the two of them. He should go with the flow and not care about the so-called secular rules. King of medicine, I have a task for you. I need to refine many pills, but I can't spare time, so this task falls on you. But you don't need to do too much. You just need to take care of the furnace, and it will refine pills on its own. Tang Zheng said, and pointed to the 9 revolving pill furnace. The king of medicine had long known that Tang Zheng had a treasure that could refine pills. He had always wanted to have a chance to study it, but he didn't dare to rashly raise this suggestion. He never thought that his dream would come true today, although this was equivalent to the work of an alchemy apprentice, which was not in line with his identity as the king of medicine. He felt as if he had found a treasure and was overjoyed. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1653. The king of medicine took over the job of guarding the pill furnace and became an alchemy boy, but Tang Zheng did not treat him unfairly. He learned many secret recipes from the tool spirit and taught them to the king of medicine one by one. The king of medicine acted as if he had received a treasure. While guarding the pill furnace, he carefully studied the recipes and compared them with the actual refining process of the 9 revolving pill furnace. Gradually, he gained more knowledge and experience. Tang Zheng became a hands-off shopkeeper, but his work was not easy. He had to constantly supervise everyone taking the golden wall breaking pill. Once there was a problem, he had to solve it in time and protect everyone. Everyone's skills reached a new level every day, and the results were gratifying. Li Xiaotian hurriedly came in front of Tang Zheng and interrupted him, instructing the others. She said in surprise, Tang Zheng, there's news of the Empyrean fairy's whereabouts. Tang Zheng's expression was calm, as if he was not moved by this news. He lightly said, Then where is she? Li Xiaotian looked at him with a strange expression and asked, Why are you not happy at all? Tang Zheng gently smiled and said, I know what you're thinking. This kind of thing cannot be forced, so I do not place all my hopes on her. Li Xiaotian's expression tightened and said, How can that be? Without her 19 saint body, how can you completely solve the problem of pure yang energy? Tang Zheng waved his hand, indicating that she did not need to worry about this. He explained, the effect of extreme yang generating yin can still be maintained for a while, so don't worry. How can I not worry? Li Xiaotian anxiously said, but seeing Tang Zheng waving his hand, as if he had made up his mind, she tactfully restrained herself and said, The Empyrean fairy has gone to the gate of heaven. Tang Zheng thought for a while and was not surprised. She wants to revive the Emperor of Heaven. The gate of heaven is her only hope. Then will she succeed? Let's wait and see. Seeing that Tang Zheng had no intention of going to the Elysium to look for the Empyrean fairy, Li Xiaotian pondered, He doesn't want to force me, but I can't just watch as his life is in danger. If he won't do it, then I'll do it. Anyone in this world can die, but not him. The expression in her eyes changed and gradually became firm. She didn't tell anyone else about this, and they might not be able to help. Since she was Tang Zheng's woman, she should share his burden. Moreover, this was related to his life, so she couldn't be careless. On the same day, Li Xiaotian left the capital. Everyone thought that she had returned to the Li Palace in Dianan, but no one knew that she had gone out to sea, heading straight for the heavenly gate. The gate of heaven was a very mysterious place. Would she be able to find the gate of heaven or reach it safely? All of this was unknown. Tang Zheng didn't know that Li Xiaotian had gone to the gate of heaven. His thoughts were on improving everyone's cultivation and then choosing the best soldiers to go to the sky beyond. Time passed day after day. More and more wall-breaking golden cores entered everyone's stomachs. Everyone's cultivation base continued to rise. Tang Zheng looked at everyone like he was inspecting soldiers and said in a clear voice, I have seen everyone's progress in the past few days, and I'm very pleased. First of all, Congratulations to everyone. Next, these good days will be suspended because it is time to test everyone's results. When everyone heard this, their spirits were lifted and they were in high spirits. They cultivated with all their strength in order to improve their cultivation as much as possible and then go to the sky beyond with Tang Zheng. Tomorrow, I will go to the sky beyond. I will choose the right person from among you to go with me and experience this adventure. But there is one thing I want to make clear. This trip to the sky beyond is extremely dangerous, and even your life is in danger. If anyone withdraws, stand out now, and I respect his opinion. There is not a single coward in the witch clan, nor is there a single deserter. Yi Yuan pounded his chest and said with an imposing manner, "Yes, there are no cowards in the witch clan." The other witch clan warriors agreed. Tang Zheng looked at them with gratification. Yi Dingdang was not willing to fall behind and volunteered, "I'm not afraid either. I want to go with you." After she started, the other girls all patted their chests and wanted to go with Tang Zheng. Even Nana was no exception. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His heart moved. Actually, he had been hesitating whether to let them go together. After all, it was too dangerous this time. Looking at everyone's fearless eyes, Tang Zheng instantly made a decision. His woman would not be a flower in a greenhouse. Without experiencing wind and rain, how could she see a rainbow? Only by experiencing some things would she be able to become stronger. Therefore, this time, he decided to bring some people with him. Only by tempering them 1,000 times would he be able to refine true gold. He would do his best to protect them and shelter them from the wind and rain, but he would also let them experience the wind and rain. "Stop fighting." Tang Zheng pressed his hands down and said, "I will choose some of you to go with me. I want to go. I want to go too." Pairs of eyes stared straight at him, unwilling to fall behind. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he was unmoved because he already had a suitable candidate in his heart and said straightforwardly, "This time, the people who are going with you are Ding Dang, Wu, and Qing Mei. What about me?" The others were all unwilling. Tang Zheng had already considered it and said, Sure. School is about to start. You have to go to school." "What about Ding Dang? Doesn't she have to go to school, too?" "I don't have to go to school." Yi Dingdang couldn't wait to express her position. "You." Fong Shishir pouted and looked at her with hidden bitterness. Yi Dingdang stuck out her tongue in embarrassment. Tang Zheng looked at Fong Shishir with a smile. Although the world has changed, but Tang Zheng understood Fong Shishir. School life was a part of her life. Even if she became a cultivator, she never thought of leaving school. Therefore, Tang Zheng would not deprive her of this opportunity and would let her fulfill her wish. As for Ling and Mu Hongyan, there was no need for them to say anything. Tang Zheng already gave his own considerations. Ling career was too busy, and that was her dream, so she had no time to spare. As for Mu Hongyan, without her, the business would not be able to operate. "Then what about me? I don't have anything to do." Nana jumped up and down and said excitedly. Tang Zheng looked at her seriously and said, "Your task is to study. You're still so young. Don't mix with everyone else." Nan bitterly pouted her mouth, as if she could hang an oil bottle on it. She tried to persuade him, rolled around, and acted shamelessly, but was unable to sway Tang Zheng's decision. "I want to go too." Tian Chanzi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Tang Zheng looked at him deeply and nodded quietly. Although Tian Chanzi did not say anything, Tang Zheng already understood his thoughts. Kingsaman was in sky beyond sky, and he naturally wanted to see his master. This was his long-cherished wish. Tang Zheng knew very well, and naturally would not deprive him of this opportunity. However, Tang Zheng did not see the deep worry and unease in the depths of Tian Chanzi's eyes. Tang Zheng's gaze turned and landed on the witch clan. Other than Yi Yuan, who he had already chosen, he also chose a few suitable elite soldiers and formed a large team of more than 20 people. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1654. Above the Nine Heavens, This majestic troop stood on the somersault cloud. The somersault cloud turned into a huge white cloud and flew above the blue sky. Pairs of eyes were opened wide as they stared at the void in front of them. They were waiting for Tang Zheng to cast his technique and open the space door. Among them, the red lunar beast was the most excited. This was because it was about to return to its home and see Xiao Bai. Tang Zheng's expression was solemn. He activated the law of space, and ripples appeared in the void in front of him. In a flash, the space door opened slowly and was clearly displayed in front of everyone. Everyone held their breaths, and their hearts were in their mouths. They stared at this magical scene without blinking. Apart from the red lunar beast, the rest had never seen the space door before. They also had no experience of traveling through space. They were curious and expectant. I can't let all of you pass through the space door personally. Therefore, I can only put all of you into the Sumeru world and let you follow me. After Tang Zheng finished his explanation, he waved his hand. The Sumeru world on his wrist flashed, and everyone disappeared. They were all put into the Sumeru world. Tang Zheng strode into the space door. The space door closed suddenly, and the surroundings were dark. He was familiar with this process. He stopped at a certain spot in the darkness and activated the law of space again. In a flash, the space door opened again. A ray of light appeared in front of him. He stepped out of the door without hesitation. The scene in front of him suddenly changed, and he was once again in the heavens beyond. Whoosh whoosh. The biting cold wind blew towards him, causing his face to hurt. However, Tang Zheng's attention was completely attracted by another scene. Below him was a continuous stretch of cities. This was the Imperial City. Not far away was the core of the heavens beyond's power, the city in the sky. Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air and hurriedly hid in the clouds to avoid being discovered by the enemy. This kind of space travel had a strong randomness. This meant that after traveling through space, one could land anywhere. This time, he had the misfortune of landing in Heavenly King Hao's territory. Hao Tianhuang's strength was unfathomable. If Tang Zheng fought against him alone, he might not be able to gain any advantage. It was better to avoid him for the time being. He lowered his head to take a look. Although he was still far away, Tang Zheng's eyesight was amazing. He still found some clues. It seemed that compared to the last time, the defense of the Imperial City was much more lax. There weren't as many soldiers patrolling the streets. He started to have doubts in his heart. He didn't understand why, but he didn't think too much about it. After all, this was the enemy's territory. He had to take advantage of the time before the enemy discovered him to leave safely. Whoosh! The somersault cloud blended in with the clouds in the sky and flew further and further away without leaving a trace. Finally, it was out of the range of the Imperial City. Only then did Tang Zheng relax. Come out. Tang Zheng opened Sumeru heavens, and everyone appeared on the somersault cloud. All of them were filled with curiosity, and they clicked their tongues in wonder. So this is the Outland. Tian Chanzi was filled with emotion. The Scarlet Moon Beast gently stroked little Yu Yu's head. He was so emotional that tears welled up in his eyes. This is your home. We are finally home. Little Yu Yu seemed to understand. She turned her eyes and looked down. Wow, look at that mountain. It's actually floating in the air. Yi Ding Dang was so shocked that she almost jumped up. She pointed at a floating mountain in the distance and shouted. It was as if everyone's eyes were not enough to take in everything. They were filled with curiosity. Wow, so many mountains floating in the air, how magical. Lu Qingmei smacked her lips and exclaimed in amazement. Marshall was silent, but the expression in her eyes said everything. Tian Chanzi pondered for a moment and said, This is the Outland that an old friend wanted to explore a long time ago. I didn't expect it to be such a scene. We're going to Suicide Valley now. Xiao Bai and his clansmen live there. We will meet up with them first. After that, we will go to the Wildlands to find other righteous people. Tang Zheng introduced. Although Tian Chanzi could not wait to see his own sect, he suppressed his urge and listened to Tang Zheng's arrangement. The Scarlet Moon Beast soared into the sky and jumped off the somersault cloud. Its four hooves were like the wind as it flew in the air and rushed forward. Little Yu followed beside it. Her speed was not inferior at all. When the others saw this, they could not hold back. They all rode on their treasures and chased after it. The group went straight to Suicide Valley. All of a sudden, the red lunar beast came to an abrupt halt and stopped in its tracks. It stared blankly into the distance. When the others looked over, they couldn't help but gasp. "What is that?" everyone exclaimed. Their eyes were wide open as they looked at the huge creature in front of them. It was hard to describe just how big this behemoth was with words. Looking into the distance, they could not see the end of it. It was as if the sky was completely occupied by this huge creature. Tang Zheng and the Scarlet Moon Beast were not unfamiliar with it. They shouted in unison, "Kuin Peng." When they said that, the others immediately remembered a description in the ancient book. The Kuin Peng was so big that it was thousands of miles long. Could this be the Kuin Peng that was described in the ancient book? The ancients did not lie. This was just like what was described in the ancient book. It turned out that this huge creature was not a legend, but a real existence. It was just that it existed in the Outland. Looking at everyone's reaction, Tang Zheng had already guessed what they were thinking. He simply explained, "It is what you think." The image of the Kuin Peng was described by Xiao Bai's mother and recorded by the later generations. Everyone was enlightened. Tian Chanzi hurriedly asked, "Is this Kuin Peng very powerful?" Tang Zheng could not answer this question because he had never seen the Kuin Peng in action and did not know its strength. The Scarlet Moon Beast said in a deep voice, "Of course the Kuin Peng is powerful, but under normal circumstances, it would not make a move. Moreover, it would not appear. Why would it appear here?" The Red Moon Beast was the most familiar with the situation in the Outer Realm. After listening to its introduction, everyone's hearts tightened, and a layer of darkness covered their hearts at the same time. Vaguely, they had an ominous feeling. Tang Zheng's face darkened. He stared ahead, which was the direction of the Suicide Valley. He hurriedly shouted, "Go to the Suicide Valley." Whoosh! Everyone returned to the somersault cloud. The somersault cloud flew at its fastest speed, and only a white shadow could be seen flying in the direction of the Suicide Valley. The somersault cloud flew under the Kuin Peng. When everyone looked up, the Kuin Peng was like an endless black cloud, pressing down on everyone's heads. They were not discovered, and they did not care if they were discovered. They had to reach the Suicide Valley as soon as possible. Finally, the Suicide Valley was in sight, but everyone's expression turned cold. Their hearts skipped a beat, as if a huge rock was pressing down on them. "Oh no!" Everyone turned pale with fright as they cried out. Although it was the first time most of them had come to the Suicide Valley, they could tell at a glance that the situation was not optimistic. The flames of war had already ignited in the Suicide Valley. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. They were all in high spirits and full of fighting spirit, releasing a cold aura. At the very front, Hao Tian Wang stood proudly. The strong wind was biting cold, causing his clothes to flutter. However, he remained calm and collected. He lowered his head to look at Xiao Bai, who was flying towards him. His expression was indifferent, as if he didn't take him seriously at all. However, he felt a little emotional in his heart. After so many years, it turned out that this group of survivors had actually been hiding in the Suicide Valley. Back then, all of this had started from the Suicide Valley. Now, it seemed that all of this would end in the Suicide Valley. Could it be that this was a cycle of reincarnation? King Wuling stood beside his father and looked at the situation below. He turned his head and looked at the people not far away. In the past, I had always wanted to kill the righteous path. I didn't expect that in the end, I would actually bring me such an unexpected piece of good news. King Wuling sighed in his heart. Not far away, a person was surrounded by Hao Tianwang's elites. He stretched his neck and saw the scene in the Suicide Valley clearly. His heart calmed down, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a smile. He still had some lingering fear in his heart. His back was already drenched in cold sweat, and he had been deliberately suppressing the fear in his heart. If Tang Zheng was here, he would definitely recognize this person. He was actually the son of the righteous alliance leader, Bai Mei Daoist. He had met Tang Zheng before. Risking his life this time was a huge gamble. He was betting on his life and his glory and wealth. Of course, it was impossible for him to make such a big decision by himself. This was the result of his discussion with his father, Bai Mei Daoist. Although Bai Mei Daoist was the righteous alliance leader, he had been chased by King Wuling's subordinates all these years. He was tired of running for his life and had long since gotten tired of this kind of life. Now he had no choice but to hide in the savage lands. Although he was the alliance leader, he had never thought of the glory and wealth of the alliance leader. Bai Mei Daoist urgently needed to solve this problem, but he didn't have a good solution. To make matters worse, Tang Zheng's visit had broken his last bit of authority, as well as the last bit of dignity he had tried his best to preserve. They believed that their position as alliance leader was in jeopardy and could be replaced at any time. This was especially so because of the unusual relationship between Kingsaman and Tang Zheng, which caused Kingsaman's status to rise. The last straw that broke their bottom line was the story of Tang Zheng and the others that Wild Dog had boasted about when he returned. A force that dared to go against Hao Tianwang. Once they joined the Righteous Alliance, the alliance leader would be as small as a shrimp. In addition, Hao Tianwang had awakened. If it was discovered that the Righteous Alliance was related to these people, he would definitely vent his anger on them. At that time, they probably wouldn't be able to hide in the savage lands and would definitely be wiped out. Bai Mei Daoist and his father didn't want to die, but they also didn't want to lose the power in their hands. Thus, after weighing the pros and cons, they made up their minds and sold out Xiao Bai and the others. They believed that they would definitely be able to sell for a good price. As long as they reached a deal with Hao Tianwang, they would no longer need to hide in the future and would enjoy glory and wealth. Bai Mei Daoist was the leader of the Righteous Alliance. With so many eyes watching him, he naturally didn't dare to leave the savage lands. Moreover, he was also worried that after he left, others would usurp his power. Thus, he sent his son, Riser, to take the risk and enter the tiger's den. He arrived at the imperial city and went straight to meet Hao Tianwang. At first, Riser was unwilling to accept this mission. After all, he had experienced the strength of the enemy. He was very afraid that after he revealed his identity, he would be killed without any reason. He wouldn't even be able to see Hao Tianwang's face. White Eyebrows Daoist tried his best to persuade his son, and only after a long time did he manage to convince his son. Riser was very clear about the situation that his father and son were facing. In the end, he simply made up his mind and took a gamble. In fact, before arriving at Suicide Valley, Riser was very nervous. Suicide Valley was accidentally revealed by the Wild Dog. Riser had no way to confirm whether the information was correct or not. If he attracted so many people but didn't find Xiao Bai's whereabouts, then he would definitely not have a good end. Death will be the cheapest end. When he looked down from the sky and saw the situation in Suicide Valley, his heart was relieved. The information that the Wild Dog accidentally revealed was true. This group of people was really hiding in Suicide Valley. He had struck it big this time. Once these enemies were eliminated, what awaited him would be glory, splendor, and wealth. This was what Heavenly King Hao had promised him and his father. He believed that the high and mighty Heavenly King Hao would not lie to him. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1656. Xiao Bao was getting closer and closer to the Kuanping. Hao Tianwang calmly withdrew his gaze and said to King Wuling, "You go and meet him." He had no intention of making a move at all. Xiao Bai could not provoke him to make a move at all. He was waiting for another person, the guy he had only met once, Tang Zheng. Xiaoming had already sold out Tang Zheng. He told Hao Tianwang all the information he knew. Hao Tianwang then realized that the person who had escaped from his hands was actually from another world. He could not help but be somewhat interested. A long, long time ago, there were also people from other worlds who had reached the heavens beyond heaven, but all of them had been killed by him. He had also thought of tracing back to find out the origins of these people. In the end, he did not get many clues and had to throw it to the back of his mind. He did not expect that after so many years, these people would appear again. Not only that, but there were also many outsiders in the heavens beyond heaven. This made Hao Tian Wang very surprised. After King Wuling's explanation, he suddenly understood. It turned out that King Wuling had already found traces of that world. He had even brought all the people from that world to the heavens beyond heaven to make up for the foundation that was exhausted in the heavens beyond heaven. This was the place where King Wuling overtook Hao Tian Wang. However, King Wuling did not have a great military strategy like Hao Tian Wang. Instead, he thought that he had already captured the strong people from the other world and brought them to the heavens beyond heaven. Moreover, from the strength of these people, there was nothing special about that world. Instead, he did not have the urge to explore it. However, the information that Xiao Ming gave was greatly beyond King Wuling's expectations. It made him lose face in front of Hao Tian Wang. He repeatedly apologized to Hao Tian Wang for his mistakes. This father and son pair were full of curiosity about that other world. Once they got rid of Xiao Bai and the others, they were a little impatient to explore that other world. What was so special about this world that it could actually produce a powerhouse like Tangzhong? This was a threat to them, so all dangerous factors had to be eliminated. King Wuling flew forward lightly, casually greeting Xiao Bai. Although he didn't seem to put Xiao Bai in his eyes at all, in fact, he was fully alert. Xiao Bai was the only surviving member of the imperial family. After King Wuling took over the imperial city, he claimed to be the new imperial family of the realm beyond heaven. However, when he saw the real imperial family, he didn't dare underestimate them. This was because King Wuling had heard too many legends about the royal family from his father. Subconsciously, he still believed that the royal family was very powerful. King Wuling lightly tapped the air with his finger, and the air instantly dropped to the freezing point. It was as if the air had solidified. A burst of ice appeared out of thin air, transforming into an ice sword that slashed toward Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai raised his bloodthirst scepter and roared. Streaks of blood shot out from the scepter, wrapping around the ice sword. The ice sword suddenly exploded without any support. King Wuling's expression changed drastically. Although this was only a small test, he already had a deep understanding of Xiao Bai's strength. He was no longer the same person as before. Xiao Bai's cultivation had increased again, and it wasn't just by a little bit. Xiao Bai's treasures were already very powerful, and with the increase in his cultivation, his battle prowess was naturally on a completely different level. The martial spirit king no longer underestimated Little White. With a flash of his body, he flew toward Little White with the force of wind and thunder, bringing about a violent sound of breaking through the air. Wherever he passed, the air froze into ice, and snowflakes floated in the sky. It was as if winter had arrived. This shocking scene attracted everyone's attention. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air, shocked by King Wuling's strength. Shiming swallowed his saliva, and his heart almost stopped beating. He couldn't help but rejoice at his wise choice. If he hadn't abandoned the darkness for the light, how could he have blocked King Wuling's attack? He believed that Xiao Bai was no match for King Wuling and would soon die under this terrifying attack. Xiao Bai stared at King Wuling, who was getting closer and closer. A cold wind blew in his face. He let out a low roar and waved his bloodthirst scepter forward. A burst of flames spurted out from the scepter, traveling along the countless streaks of blood and instantly igniting the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The sky burned as if it had been doused in gasoline. The two streams of air, one hot and one cold, collided, and two arcs appeared in the sky. This was the result of the two streams of air colliding. The two arcs of air continued to collide, and neither retreated. Both of them pressed forward with frightening momentum. The sky seemed to be torn apart by the collision of the two streams of air. Boom! With a loud explosion, the two streams of air couldn't do anything to each other. They exploded and disappeared without a trace. A vacuum appeared in the sky, and the surrounding air instantly filled the vacuum, causing a series of sharp whistling sounds. It formed a turbulent flow, and no one could approach it. If they approached, they would probably be torn to pieces by this power. In the next second, Xiao Bai and King Wuling clashed in close combat. King Wuling's ice sword covered in frost appeared in his hand. However, the frost had no way of covering the sacred inscriptions underneath. The sacred inscriptions were especially eye-catching. A sacred artifact. This ice sword was also a sacred artifact, but compared to the Bloodthirst scepter, it was slightly inferior. After all, the Bloodthirst scepter was a divine weapon that Hao Tianwang had coveted back then. Naturally, it was not something that ordinary magic treasures could compare to. The two divine tools collided. All was silent, and the entire world was quiet. Pairs of eyes stared at this scene. Then, in the next second, an intense light almost blinded everyone's eyes. Many people subconsciously closed their eyes. Except for a few people who calmly watched this scene, everyone else was deeply shocked. The ancestor stared at this scene with shining eyes and was secretly gratified. His Majesty indeed had the blood of the royal family in him. The speed at which his strength increased could be called a miracle. However, Tang Zheng's figure flashed in his mind, and he immediately squeezed him out of his mind. He didn't want to compare himself with such a perverted guy. There was no comparison. Before this, Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai had cultivated together in the Universal Palace together. Xiao Bai had already touched the threshold of the 5th grade of the Mahayana realm. After that, Xiao Bai cultivated day and night in the Heavenly Palace. A day in the outside world was equivalent to several years in the Heavenly Palace. Finally, his cultivation base broke through that threshold and truly reached the 5th stage of the Mahayana realm. King Wuling's cultivation was also at the 5th grade of the Mahayana realm, but his magic treasure couldn't compare to the Bloodthirst scepter. Therefore, after this all-out attack, the effect immediately became apparent. The outcome was already decided. Poof! A flame spread all the way down from his chest to his lower body. In an instant, he became a living person. The flame spread all over his body at lightning speed. Ah! Chapter 16:57. The scar on King Wuling's chest was a ghastly sight. When the others saw it, they couldn't help but gasp. Who was King Wuling? He had been a master of Beyond Heaven for a long time. He was the most powerful person in the Imperial City, the city in the sky. He was above hundreds of thousands of people. However, he had lost to Xiao Bai in front of everyone. The impact was self-evident. The air was dead silent. Pairs of eyes stared at King Wuling without blinking. King Wuling's eyes were dull. He felt like he was in a trance. It was like a dream. It didn't seem real at all. However, the reality was that it was absolutely real. He had really lost just like that. He twisted his neck with difficulty. It was like a door that hadn't been turned for many years. His neck made a cracking sound. He looked at Hao Tianwang nervously. Bang! His heart jumped. It was as if he had fallen from a high altitude into an abyss. He was almost smashed to pieces. From Hao Tianwang's eyes, King Wuling felt a bone-chilling coldness. It was 1,000,000 times colder than the ice on his body. It was as if his heart was going to be frozen. Just this simple look made him feel like he couldn't move. Hao Tianwang's face was as calm as water. In fact, his heart was extremely cold. He didn't expect that the son he had always placed high hopes on would lose to Xiao Bai. Didn't this mean that the descendant he had carefully cultivated couldn't compare to the descendant of the imperial family? Hao Tianwang had always wanted to suppress the imperial family. Everyone knew that the imperial family's bloodline was extraordinary. However, he was still full of confidence and ambition in his own bloodline. If his bloodline defeated the imperial family's bloodline, it would mean that his descendant defeated the imperial family's descendant. That would be the true victory in this plot to usurp power. However, The cruel reality was that he had been slapped hard in the face. He clearly recognized the reality. The descendant he had carefully cultivated was actually inferior to the descendant of the imperial family. The others also looked at the father and son. Although they didn't think so deeply, they all realized that Hao Tianwang wasn't in a good mood at all. The ancestor and the others caught up to Xiaobai and cheered. It was an auspicious time to leave the apprenticeship and welcome the first battle. This was an excellent start. The ancestor's eyes were brimming with tears as he excitedly muttered to himself, "The late emperor's spirit in heaven. Did you see this? This is your descendant. He defeated the traitor's descendant." The cheers were like steel needles that ruthlessly pierced into the hearts of the enemies. Their faces were gloomy to the extreme, and the anger in their eyes seemed to be about to spurt out. The ancestor glared at Hao Tianwang and gritted his teeth. "You traitor! You betrayed the late king, yet you are still alive." Hao Tianwang glanced at the ancestor and said, "Aren't you still alive? Old man, you didn't die even after hiding all over the place. So how can I die?" The ancestor coldly snorted and said, "Who's your old man? I was ashamed to be associated with you back then because I didn't see through your ambitions and told the late emperor to be wary of you. However, now that the new emperor has returned, your doomsday is coming." Back then, the two of them were protectors and had the greatest power under the late emperor. They were called the late emperor's left and right arms. Hao Tianwang wasn't angry at all and glanced at Xiaobai indifferently. "He can't even protect himself, so what ability does he have to threaten me? Hee, I've been looking for you for so many years, but you all hid like rats. I finally found you this time, so don't even think about escaping. Today is your doomsday." Hao Tianwang's tone was calm, but no one dared to underestimate the monstrous, murderous aura. The ancestor's heart skipped a beat, and his expression changed slightly. He did his best to suppress his emotions and said sternly, "Nonsense. His Majesty has already defeated the King Wuling that you nurtured. This is enough to prove everything. If he dies, then all of this will be gone." Heavenly King Hao said calmly. He extended his finger and pointed at Little White and the others. Boom! His subordinates began to shout, and their voices were deafening as they charged towards Little White and the others. Xiaobai didn't move and remained as still as a mountain. Seeing the enemies getting closer and closer, he finally waved his hand forward. The ancestor's eyes were red as he roared, "Kill!" Under the order, the ancestor took the lead and rushed out. Mi Wu and the others also rushed towards the enemies without fear. Although the Kuin Peng was high up in the sky and was filled with enemies, they didn't dare to back down. Instead, they pressed forward with indomitable will. The two forces hadn't even come into contact with each other in midair, but all kinds of multicolored magical treasures were the first to clash. Waves of resplendent light exploded and shook the heavens and earth. The explosions never stopped. Xiaobai and Hao Tianwang didn't move. Their gazes pierced through the layers of obstacles and clashed with each other in midair. There seemed to be invisible sparks bursting forth. Wherever their gazes passed, there would be a soul-stirring aura and demonic power. The others all retreated and avoided these two gazes. Xiaobai understood too much from these gazes. The kind of high and mighty arrogance made him very unhappy. He roared loudly and rushed towards the sky. Whoosh! He was like a meteor as he rushed towards Hao Tianwang. However, Hao Tianwang stood on the Kuin Peng and didn't move at all. He watched as Xiaobai rushed in front of him. Wherever Xiaobai passed by, there would be enemies who tried to stop him. However, they were all struck by the bloodthirsty scepter and fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Hao Tianwang finally reached out his hand and slammed down at Xiaobai. A huge palm appeared out of nowhere and slammed down fiercely. It was as if there were millions of pounds of horrifying power pressing down from the sky. Boom! The air was compressed and exploded. The area around Xiaobai turned into a vacuum. Even the air was forced away. Break! Xiaobai roared and struck out with the bloodthirsty scepter. Streaks of blood flew out from the scepter and whizzed towards the huge palm. Boom! With a loud sound, the streaks of blood exploded one after another. The radiance of the bloodthirsty scepter dimmed. Xiao Bai's hands were trembling violently. The immense pain had deeply stimulated his nerves. He almost couldn't hold on to the bloodthirsty scepter and let it fly out of his hands. However, he clenched his teeth and held on. He spat out a mouthful of blood onto the bloodthirsty scepter. In an instant, the scepter exploded with resplendent light. Countless streaks of blood flew out from the bloodthirsty scepter and condensed into a huge barrier, blocking the huge palm. The huge palm stopped and was in a deadlock with the bloodthirsty scepter. Hao Tianwang's eyes flickered with a strange light. He stared at the bloodthirsty scepter and praised with great interest. The bloodthirsty scepter is extraordinary. Obviously, Hao Tianwang had already seen through everything. Although Xiao Bai seemed to be able to block Hao Tianwang's attack, it wasn't entirely due to Xiao Bai's strength. A large part of the credit was due to the bloodthirsty scepter. It was precisely because of the bloodthirsty scepter's enormous power that Xiao Bai's overall strength soared. He was actually able to block Hao Tianwang's attack. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.